Greetings, superior beings. Greetings, superior beings. Greetings, supreme being. We are all the human race. Our common enemy is death. Welcome on Perfect Society on YouTube. I'm 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮 and you're watching the broadcast Trump Peace Plan World War Headlines and INGERSOLL LOCKWOOD Prediction Last Precedent. Okay. So let me start with the new picture that I've basically... There's a book of INGERSOLL LOCKWOOD. There are 3 books basically. You have Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey by INGERSOLL LOCKWOOD, written in 1893. So that's verified. Most people agree that this is genuine. And recently I also did a broadcast about the cartoon, and a Twitterer, @𝓼𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮, predicted Kobe would die in a helicopter crash in 2012. And I explain the evidence that proves that this prediction was correct, though it was not listed as a prediction. It was just a Twitter post and a cartoon in which Kobe Bryant died recently. And the Trump Peace Plan equals World War Plan video gives more information about this idea. I will get to that later. First I will start with the more impressive, what I think is pretty impressive, what could be a prediction of a time-traveling neural network to prevent World War III, to warn people, to prepare and survive. So this was written in 1893, Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey, and it talks about Pence, and also the location of the Trump Towers are pretty accurately described in this book. Baron Trump is, here it's spelled with 1 R, but Baron Trump, the name of Trump's son, is of course spelled with 2 R's. And this is another book. He also wrote 1900 or Last President. That's this book. I'll get to that later. Let's see. Scroll up. 1900 or Last President by INGERSOLL LOCKWOOD of the New York Bar. Copyright 1896 by INGERSOLL LOCKWOOD. Okay, so that's what a prediction is based on. A possible World War III start date, 3rd of March 2020. So this has to load. Obviously I already made a screenshot of it. Let's see if I can find it fast. I have a better one. I first have to turn on the picture show. Okay, so when we look at Travels and Adventures of Little Baron Trump and his wonderful dog Bulger by INGERSOLL LOCKWOOD, then we see at the top here of this drawing on the, what is it, the 3rd page or something. Perhaps it's interesting. Did I close the PDF reader really? Then I have to reopen that. Just a moment. PDFs. I just open a random PDF and then I can reopen the files. Okay, 3 PDFs open. Because I need them for the prediction. So what are the odds that somebody in 1893 would write a book with the title 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮's Marvelous Underground Journey, and also mentioned Pence in the book? Pence is the Secretary of Agriculture, and described the location of Trump Towers pretty accurately. Trump's uncle is also associated with time travel patents, John Trump, and apparently the PDF reader crashes. So then let's go to the picture. They want to hide this, so that's why that's happening. I didn't close the PDF reader the first time either, perhaps they just crashed it with wireless energy. So these Jesuits are supposedly in control of the intelligence agencies, which are all Masonic, according to Citizens Action Network on Facebook. Let's see the correct image with that. Arturo Sosa. And turn off the time travel neural network picture. So this is the current leader of the Jesuits. So he supposedly controls from behind the scenes, so they would deny it to keep it secret, to be able to kill with impunity, and so nobody can be held responsible for the directed energy weapon torture, etc. So again, this is theory. If it were true, nobody could prove it, because they can remotely torture and kill people with this technology. So he supposedly controls the CIA, FBI, NSA, MI5, MI6, FSB, formerly KGB, Mossad, and every intelligence agency in the world. And all these intel agencies are Masonic and controlled by the Jesuits. Let me reopen these PDFs. Perhaps I can open them with the browser. I'll open them with the browser. 1, 2, and 3. Like this, and then I can go back to the picture. So the picture on the drawing at the top looks like the current Pope, Bergoglio, Pope Francis, a Jesuit Pope, and then we see some other people. I don't know the name of this man, and this one is... So these are just guesses. Perhaps your guess is better than mine. Renate Raffaele Martino, the Cardinal Deacon of St. Francesco di Paola al Monte. He has been cardinal since 2003. So could this picture actually show the people that will be responsible for the world war? The people way at the top. Supposedly it's Arturo Sosa. And of course this man is Adolfo Nicholas. I thought this one looks a little bit like him. But especially the man at the top looks very much like the current Pope. So then, how did I get to the date of the prediction? Little Baron Trump and his wonderful dog Bulger. Well, for that I would go to 1900 or last presidents. And I don't know if this is the only date shown in all three of the books. 1897. Executive Mansion, Washington, D.C., March 4th, 1897, Executive Order Number 1. In order that there may be immediate relief in the terrible financial depression now weighing upon our beloved country, etc. But the first mention is on page 15, that the 4th of March 1897 would never dawn upon the American people. So could this suggest that Trump will be the last president? And could the 4th of March 2020 be the start of World War III, the start date? So the book is called 1900 or Last Presidents. Minus 1897 is 3, so that could indicate World War III, 4th of March. But how then to get to 2020? Well, some people think 322 of Skull and Bones stands for the 23rd of March, 22nd of March, I mean. And others think it stands for World War III 2020. So zeros are not counted when doing gematria, numerology, that type of thing. So it's very, it's reaching to find a possible start date of World War III, basically. So if anybody has a better start date, please let us know, so that people can prepare for it, but also prevent that, basically, when they know a possible risk date that it could take place. Then perhaps chances of preventing a world war and creating world peace or universal peace are increased. So what I also will read is the news. This is of about an hour ago, about the Trump peace plan. Some people think that's just the Vatican's two-state solution world war plan to reduce the global population to 500 million and impose a satanic Luciferian totalitarian global government. Also because many people have called for a new world order, and there are many book quotes of people that want to reduce the global population to 500 million, some to 100 million. And also the $1 Million Georgia Guidestones advocate this, maintaining global population at around 500 million. It is clear some people are bloody serious about a population reduction to 500 million and a global government. Biden, Bush and others have spoken out in favor of such a New World Order global government. So it's no conspiracy theory, but a conspiracy fact. And more about it in my previous broadcasts. But first I want to read something. I'm watching a movie. And that's the movie Threads. Somebody on YouTube. I could perhaps check his channel. If I would Google coronavirus gas mask. So get that radiological water filter and storable food, and immunize yourselves with colloidal silver and probiotics to prevent being injected at gunpoint with killer vaccines. If everybody immunizes themselves, they cannot get Ebola and they cannot get coronavirus infection. So people can buy a silver generator for $15 on eBay, and then all they need is distilled water, aqua purificata destillata. Urban Prepper, no. Weapons and Stuff 93. I've been watching his broadcasts, and he thought that this movie, Threads 1984, most accurately shows what would happen if there would be a thermonuclear world war. And theoretically, if there's a time-traveling neural network out there, then movies can also contain truthful information, so it could be a possible real scenario. We could be in a multiverse, so perhaps it's possible that timelines shift, and people are getting more knowledgeable, also because of internet. They learn what they must to survive, they understand survival is all, and it's a good idea to prep, to be prepared, even when there's peace at this moment. It's good to be prepared for possible solar storm, nuclear events, and other emergency type scenarios. So let's read this then. Movie Threads. The following events lead up to World War III in the movie. I had restarted the speech engine, I thought, but I've only closed it, not started it up yet, but it only takes a second. And apparently when I start Open Broadcaster software, I have to restart the text-to-speech engine. So this drawing, let me know what you all think about it. Could this be Bergoglio? And could the other people be? And who are these other three people then, if these are correct, which I doubt. So this is completely a total guess. It's not clear to me that this person we see on the drawing, is this person. There's some similarity between all these people and the people on the drawing, but it's in no way evidence. What is written on the notice thing there? On and after this date, all tutor. And the rest is unreadable like this. So let's read the things I've written down about the movie.
Movie, Threads, 1984. The following events lead up to World War III in the movie. Soviet convoys on the move in northern Iran spotted by U.S. satellites. The Soviet Prime Minister has defended the incursions and has accused the United States of deliberately prompting last week's coup. U.S. sending troops to the Middle East. Red Army tanks go in. Headline of newspaper. A serious incident involving a U.S. warship off the coast of Iran rumored to be a U.S. submarine that disappeared while on patrol in the area. A U.S. and Russian destroyer collided. Paratroops go in. U.S. acts on Iran landing sites near Isfahan. Reagan's decision. Headline of newspaper number 2. There is a dog named Spark in the movie. Apache Spark is an open-source distributed general-purpose cluster computing framework. Spark provides an interface for programming entire clusters with implicit data parallelism and fault tolerance. Wiki initial release May 26, 2014. Syria. Pro-Assad forces batter Idlib. Spark fears a fresh crisis. The Guardian 6 hours ago, January 31, 2020. Dow dives more than 500 points as coronavirus fears spark. Business Insider Nordic 3 hours ago, January 31, 2020. 2 nuclear explosions in Iran later on in the movie. 835 single warhead explodes high above North Sea. Energy pulse burns out many electrical systems at 48 minutes and 48 seconds in the movie. Massive damage to communications across Britain and Northwest Europe. 8:37 First missile salvo hits NATO military targets. Garage of Faraday. 80 megatons fall on UK. Blast casualties between 2.5 and 9 million. Messages shown throughout the movie. Communications in chaos. Command and control links failing. Nuclear exchanges escalate. No food distribution until at least 2 weeks after the attack. Trump peace plan World War headlines and INGERSOLL Lockwood prediction last president.
So first I'll read the headlines of about an hour ago, or 3 hours ago, and then I'll reload the page, all about Trump's Mideast peace plan world war, so potential two-state solution world war.
Full coverage, top coverage. Fox News: Trump's Mideast peace plan could have major long-term implications for ally Jordan. President Trump released his deal of the century plan for Middle East peace, called Peace to Prosperity, on January 28 alongside Israeli Prime Minister. 6 hours ago. Play_arrow. Al Jazeera English Jordan, a muted response to Trump's Middle East plan video _YouTube 15 hours ago. Turkey's Erdogan criticizes Arab silence over U.S. Middle East plan. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan on Friday criticized Saudi Arabia and other Gulf Arab nations for not speaking out against the U.S. Middle East plan, which he, 5 hours ago. The Hill: Palestinians face shrinking options with Trump peace plan. The Hill: President Trump's Middle East peace plan unveiled this week has put a spotlight on the shrinking options for the Palestinians, who now face a ticking clock. On a 7 hours ago videos. Play_arrow. Al Jazeera English: Palestinian president to take Trump's Middle East plan to UN video _YouTube yesterday. Play_arrow. What Trump's Middle East plan means for Palestinians. Mustafa Barghouti writes that the Trump's proposed Israel-Palestine deal violates international law, ends any possibility for an independent, sovereign Palestine. 16 hours ago. Opinion timeline. Twitter.com: protests underway in Palestine as Trump unveils Middle East two-state solution. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu joined President Trump at the White House on Tuesday, where they unveiled a new Middle East peace initiative. 3 days ago. President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, before unveiling a peace plan for the Middle East. Doug Mills, The New York Times. Trump's Mideast plan could give Israel sovereignty over much of Jordan Valley. 4 days ago. Trump says Middle East plan to be unveiled before Israel's PM and opposition leader visit White House Tuesday. 7 days ago. Opinion. Palestinians don't need the Trump administration's peace plan or Jared Kushner to civilize them. The struggle for Palestinian freedom was denigrated, yet again, this week when the leaders of the U.S. and Israel stood side by side at the White House and unveiled the Trump administration's new peace plan. 5 hours ago. Trump's Middle East plan, starting point or dead end? From all appearances, the deal of the century, as it was touted, seemed nothing more than a cynical attempt at a diversion by two politicians in trouble, a sop to their right-wing bases as each leader vies for re-election, Mr. Netanyahu in early March, Mr. Trump in November. 17 hours ago. Fox News: Kent Ahmed, Trump's Israeli-Palestinian peace plan deserves Arab League support despite Abbas' foolish comments. The peace plan's potential is exciting and its intention is a direct overture for re-engagement of the Palestinians into the peace process. 9 hours ago. The plan gives Israel just about everything Israeli hardliners want. The Palestinians get nothing. Little surprise considering that the plan was developed without consulting them. Trump's foreign policy is cynical and self-interested. His peace plan is no exception. The plan is a giant. 8 hours ago. Analysis of Palestinian protester burns a picture of President Trump in the West Bank city of Ramallah on January 30. Nasser, app. Trump's Middle East plan marks the end of the two-state solution. Want smart analysis of the most important news in your inbox every weekday, along with other global reads, interesting ideas and opinions? Sign up for the 13 hours ago. Washington Post: the White House peace plan puts Israel's concerns first, and shortchanges Palestinians. The Trump administration announced its long-promised deal of the century this week, proclaiming new breakthroughs in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But yesterday from Twitter, CNN verified _user CNN Jared Kushner, senior advisor to the president, says the White House's Middle East plan is a great deal, and if Palestinians reject it, they're going to screw up another opportunity, like they've screwed up every other opportunity that they've ever had in their existence. https://t.co/abai3geekjig Twitter January 28, 2020 10:17 p.m. Abbas al-Lawanda verified _user Alawati Kushner tells Sky News Arabia he has read 25 books on the Israel-Palestine conflict. Twitter January 29, 2020 12:52 p.m. Raf Sanchez verified _user Raf Sanchez Netanyahu lays out conditions for Palestinian statehood. Palestinians must recognize Israel as Jewish state. Israel full security control over West Bank. Hamas must disarm. No right of return for Palestinian refugees. Jerusalem united under Israeli control. No settlers uprooted. Twitter January 28, 2020 6:50 p.m. Ben Silverstein this map is very generously shaded to give appearance of contiguity. 100% final map will appear closer to archipelago map on the right. https://t.co/plclock4r2 Twitter January 28, 2020 7:35 p.m. View on Twitter @arrow_forward all coverage. Trump's game-changing speech of the century. U.S. President Donald Trump's speech on Tuesday, in which he outlined the deal of the century that has been 3 years in the making, was nothing short of yesterday opinion. Middle East-type Palestinians have indeed missed an opportunity to surrender to Zionism. Trump's deal of the century is simply the latest version of the State of Israel's colonial and racist demands. 6 hours ago opinion. Israel hamed the Palestinians' bluff has been called. U.S. President Donald Trump's Middle East deal of the century offers the Palestinians a state. They have rejected it and threatened instead to ramp up violence. 10 hours ago opinion. Netanyahu's gamble on Trump plan backfires at home. Abroad reactions have been almost unanimous in proclaiming that U.S. President Trump's plan only benefits Israel, but even there, voters are mixed and not enthused. Yesterday opinion. The Economist Donald Trump's one-sided peace plan. The prospect of peace between Israel and the Palestinians has grown so dim, it is easy to forget that President Donald Trump's efforts to end the conflict. 14 hours ago opinion. Forward, there actually is an Israeli-Palestinian peace deal that's working. In Gaza it will take time for the full ramifications of Trump's plan to play out, but the outlook is not bright. Yesterday opinion. President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu left participate in a joint statement in the East Room of the White House on Tuesday. Trump's Middle East peace plan helps Benjamin Netanyahu, but hurts Israel. Trump's Middle East peace plan, the deal of the century, combined with Netanyahu's indictment, helps Israel now, but could hurt it in the long term. Yesterday opinion. Trump's peace plan is very bad. But it's not completely terrible. Trump's one-sided vision to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a serenade to evangelicals and the adolescents, and ratifies America's withdrawal from the 6 hours ago opinion. A Palestinian woman places Palestinian national flags in the ground during a protest near the Jewish settlement of Beqahat in the Jordan Valley, West Bank, on Wednesday, January 29, 2020. The Israeli cabinet won't be ready to vote on annexing West Bank settlements by Sunday as planned, a minister said, following the unveiling of U.S. President Donald Trump's peace plan. Palestinians have few nonviolent options left. It's hard to imagine any other credible response to Trump's peace plan. Yesterday opinion. Daily Sabah. Turkey calls on international community to take stance against injustice in Jerusalem. Reiterating Turkey's determined stance against injustice, Ankara urged the international community to unite in support of the Palestinian cause. Yesterday International. The Times of Israel never gonna give annexation up. 6 things to know for January 31st. 1. Sovereign suck it. With the West Bank annexation train seemingly stopped in its tracks before it could leave the station, at least for now, attention has. 8 hours ago, the Times of Israel Army, police gird for possible violence amid fury over Trump plan. Israeli forces were readying Friday for the possibility of violence amid simmering Palestinian anger over a new U.S. peace plan, though Israeli officials believe, 12 hours ago. Patriot Post Tony Perkins, a plan for shalom in Israel. Tuesday, President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu unveiled the long-awaited Middle East peace plan. The 180-page plan, officially titled, Yesterday Opinion, where Trump's peace plan is a win-win, for himself and Netanyahu seeking immunity from prosecution, promoting voter suppression, cozying up to dictators and promoting revisionist history, pandering to fundamentalists and, Yesterday Opinion. Palestinians protest against U.S. President Donald Trump's Middle East plan in front of Israeli forces in the Jordan Valley in the occupied West Bank. Trapped and voiceless, the Palestinians depicted in Trump's plan. Donald Trump's Middle East plan has fully adopted the Israeli agenda and ignores the fundamental problem that has continued for more than 70 years. Yesterday Opinion. How Arab leaders abandon Muslim causes. How Arab leaders abandon Muslim causes. The drastic realignment of international alliances leaves vulnerable Muslims with few powerful friends. Yesterday Opinion. Jewish journal. Saudi Arabia is more pro-Israel than the Democratic Party for decades. Saudi Arabia, a territorially expansive nation and home to Islamic holy cities Mecca and Medina, represented a symbolic epicenter of the 17 hours ago opinion. There is no occupation. U.S. compares its military in Germany to Israel in Palestine. Israeli soldiers patrolling a future Palestinian state should not be considered occupying powers, according to David Friedman, the U.S. ambassador to Israel. Yesterday International. World News Group. Redrawing alliances, politics. Washington. The White House unveiled its Middle East peace plan this week, and the proposal is redefining more boundaries than simply those between. Yesterday Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas delivers a speech in the West Bank city of Ramallah on Tuesday, following the announcement by President Trump of the Mideast peace plan. Opinion. Trump's fundamentally flawed vision for Mideast peace. Daniel B. Shapiro, at Daniel B. Shapiro, is a visiting fellow at the Institute for National Security Studies in Tel Aviv. He served as U.S. ambassador to Israel and on Yesterday Opinion. God puts people in places, including Trump, says U.S. ambassador to Israel. The Trump administration's peace plan preserves Israel's sovereignty and offers Palestinians an opportunity to live in peace and prosperity. U.S. ambassador to 7 hours ago. Mondo's photo essay. Palestinians converge on Jordan Valley checkpoints to protest Trump plan. Palestinians protested the Trump deal that would annex the Jordan Valley, the breadbasket of the West Bank, by motoring trackers through an Israeli checkpoint, yesterday. Turkey. Jerusalem is sacred for Muslims. Trump's deal doesn't serve peace. U.S. President Donald Trump's deal of the century ignores Palestinians' rights and attempts to legitimize Israel's occupation, Turkish President Recep Tayyip. Yesterday International. Al-Monitor. Israel. Trump's plan revokes Israeli Arab citizenship. The authors of the Trump-Netanyahu peace plan bothered to ask Israeli Arabs whether they wanted to become Palestinian nationals, but the deal nonetheless. 4 hours ago. Haaretz. Hamas's Meshal says United Palestinians working to foil Trump plan. The righteous are stronger than the unrighteous, Meshal says, blasting Arab states that have chosen to side with the U.S. 17 hours ago. Blue and White to bring Trump plan to a vote in Knesset. Motion. Blue and White intends to bring a motion to the agenda in the Knesset plenum proposing that the parliament adopt the Trump plan for the Israel-Palestinian. Yesterday. The Times of Israel. Trump team suggests plan not entirely set in stone, but core aspects seem to be. Washington. The Trump administration is insisting that the contours of its peace plan are not fully set in stone, the Times of Israel learned Thursday, 5 hours ago. Hamas. Meshal says Palestinians working to foil Trump plan. Palestinians around the world are uniting to thwart U.S. President Donald Trump's Middle East peace plan, former Hamas leader Khalid Meshal said. Yesterday, Washington. Examiner. Trump stud Israel-Palestine peace plan just another example of failed diplomacy. If the Trump administration has learned anything this week, it's that diplomacy is difficult. The White House's 181-page Middle East peace plan, a product of Yesterday, opinion Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas delivers a speech on Tuesday in Ramallah after the unveiling of the U.S.-Israeli plan for the Middle East. After Trump's plan, what options do Palestinian leaders have? Palestinian Authority says it will go to United Nations, as analysts warn leaders must take action soon. Yesterday International. News former Hamas leader, Palestinians working to foil Trump plan. Peace plan envisages two-state solution, but with strict conditions that Palestinians have balked at. Mashal calls to return to traditional position which holds on to. Yesterday, Palestinians face uphill battle against Trump's Middle East plan. Jerusalem. Reuters. When Palestinian leaders learned that the release of U.S. President Donald Trump's Middle East plan was imminent, they swiftly, 5 hours ago. Jerusalem Online. Kushner tells Israel to slow down on annexation plans. President Donald Trump's son-in-law, advisor, and Israeli-Palestinian peace plan architect Jared Kushner has urged Israel to hold off on plans to annex. Yesterday, the Daily Wire. Senate Democrats' response to Trump's peace plan is historically ignorant. After the unveiling of President Donald Trump's proposed peace plan in the Middle East, numerous Senate Democrats took time out of their busy schedule to. Yesterday, Jerusalem Online. Hamas, red line crossed, all options now on the table. Donald Trump's peace plan, which was announced on Tuesday, led to a rare show of unity between the two key Palestinian factions, both Hamas and Fatah. 10 hours ago, Haaretz Israeli forces severely wound Palestinian teen in West Bank clashes. A total of 42 Palestinians were wounded in protests against Trump's Mideast plan throughout the West Bank since its publication. Yesterday, Comic Sans Jared Kushner gets dragged after boasting about having read 25 books on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Jared Kushner's qualifications for brokering an Israeli-Palestinian peace plan are questionable at best. Yesterday, The Times of Israel joint list MK says party want back blue and white over support of Trump plan. A lawmaker from the Joint List Alliance said Friday his party would not give their backing again to the blue and white party after the next elections since leader. 1 hour ago Abu Dis is part of Jerusalem Governorate, but lies outside the municipal limits of the city. A joke. Palestinians slammed Trump's proposal for new capital under U.S. proposal. A small village in East Jerusalem has been earmarked as capital of a future Palestinian state. 8 hours ago International. Jewish Journal. We found Jared Kushner's Israeli-Palestinian book list after President Trump unveiled his Israeli-Palestinian peace plan on Monday. White House senior advisor Jared Kushner, one of the key architects of the plan, yesterday. Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Former President Carter blasts Trump's Mideast peace plan. Former President Jimmy Carter issued a statement Thursday rejecting President Donald Trump's newly proposed Middle East peace plan, which calls for the 3 hours ago. Daily 𝓎𝓆𝓮𝓮 urges Muslim countries to raise voice against Trump's Mideast plan. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan reiterated his strong opposition to U.S. President Donald Trump's so-called deal of the century, as he urged,
basically, we shouldn't do anything, not make any changes, unless we can control the outcome. So it's best to do nothing unless we can control the outcome, and we know the outcome is better when we take a certain action, when we do something. So putting pressure on the Mideast or on Iran, perhaps doing the opposite, is better. Instead of putting pressure on them, relieving pressure. In ending state-sponsored terrorism on both sides. Ending US state-sponsored terrorism and Iran state-sponsored terrorism.
Muslim, 9 hours ago International play_arrow. Vo News. Palestinians clash with Israeli forces in Hebron over Trump's peace plan. Video _YouTube. Yesterday, The Times of Israel. It can only be Jared. 8 things to know for January 30th. 1. Back to the annexing board. Senior White House advisor Jared Kushner has told the media that Israel will not start annexing before elections on March 2nd. Yesterday, Arab News: Trump plan may deal a fatal blow to peace. U.S. President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu outside the Oval Office of the White House in Washington, D.C. Reuters, yesterday. International. Like past U.S. proposals, Trump peace deal expects Palestinians to surrender all their rights. Senior White House advisor Jared Kushner argued this week that U.S. President Donald Trump's deal may be the Palestinians' last hope for peace in the Middle. Yesterday. International. Israel 𝓮𝓮, the Arab sector's new dilemma. The deal of the century, or Safkat al-Qarn in Arabic, is the most mentioned phrase on social media by the Arab community in Israel this week. The plan affects, 14 hours ago, Cleveland Jewish News Aaron David Miller, 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮 share similar thoughts on Trump peace plan. President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have called the peace plan the president released on January 28 historic. 5 hours ago, Al-Monitor protests break out in Jordan against Trump's deal of the century. Amman, as U.S. President Donald Trump unveiled the details of his peace plan January 28, dozens of Jordanians rallied in front of the U.S. Embassy in Amman, yesterday. Interpress Service: U.S. Mideast peace plan, Israelis offered the cheese and Palestinians the whole. United Nations, Jan 30, 2020, IPS. The Israeli human rights organization 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮 has described the much ballyhooed U.S. Middle East peace plan as, yesterday. International. President Donald Trump, joined by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, speaks during an event in the East Room of the White House in Washington, Tuesday, January 28, 2020, to announce the Trump administration's much-anticipated plan to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. App photo, Alex Brandon. NJ.com. A Mideast peace plan that can't possibly achieve peace. Moran: President Trump's plan for Mideast peace has no chance of resolving the conflict because it sides entirely with Israel on every point. It is a vision of a Mideast. Yesterday. Opinion. Israel 𝓮𝓮 on the path to sovereignty. We must walk in step with the U.S. We cannot be greedy and try grabbing everything at once, because this is also the quickest way to lose everything. If Israel opts for an approach that is viewed, 11 hours ago, Palestinians protest in Jerusalem against Trump's deal of the century. Video. Earlier this week, U.S. President Donald Trump unveiled his long-awaited deal of the century, an Israeli-Palestinian peace plan that stipulates a two-state. 11 hours ago. International. Haaretz: Turkey's Erdogan berates treasonous Arab leaders who backed Trump's Mideast plan. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Friday berated the Arab countries that back U.S. President Donald Trump's Middle East plan, charging it as, 7 hours ago, Netanyahu, Israeli right turns against deal of the century. Israeli media reported, Thursday, that the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, is very concerned about what appears to be a move by far-right parties. 17 hours ago. International. Plus 972 magazine. Trump vilifies Palestinians for using the same violence that birthed Israel. Trump's deal of the century speech condemned Palestinians for terrorism and praised Israel for peace, all while ignoring Israel's own violent history. Yesterday. Al-Monitor: Palestine: will Israel go through with plan to develop Gaza gas field? Amid reports about talks between Israel and the Palestinian Authority to import gas to the territories, sources say the PA intends to get gas to operate Gaza's. 12 hours ago. Plus 972 magazine. From Clinton to Obama, U.S. peace deals have paved the path to apartheid. America's peace parameters have sanctioned Israel's domination of Palestinians decades before Trump. Yesterday. Israel Today analysis: the real reason Trump's peace plan is historic. The Trump peace plan for Israel, the deal of the century, as he calls it, is groundbreaking, but not so much due to its content. Yesterday. CBN News: deal or no deal? Israelis, Palestinians react to peace plan. President Donald Trump's deal of the century continues to generate reaction among both Palestinians and Israelis. 6 hours ago. The Spectator USA: the critics are wrong to scoff at Trump's Israel-Palestine deal in business. When I have a tough deal, people would say, this is tougher than the Israelis and the Palestinians, said President Donald Trump as he unveiled, 8 hours ago, Highway to Hell. Iranian Foreign Minister Zarif resumes bashing of Trump's Middle East peace plan on Wednesday. PNA President Mahmoud Abbas reportedly warned Israel that the Palestinians would scrap their security agreements with the Jewish state as a Yesterday International. The Hill-Carter-Trump plan undercuts prospects for a just peace between Israelis and Palestinians. The Hill former President Jimmy Carter criticized President Trump's Middle East plan Thursday, saying it undercuts prospects for a just peace between Israelis and, 17 hours ago, Daily Sabah deal breaker of the century. Hill Kaplan. The details of the deal of the century presented by U.S. President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have finally been disclosed. 19 hours ago International. Israel Hayom misreading reality. Palestinians overplayed their hand. The writing was on the wall, but Ramallah and Gaza refused to see it. For decades, the Palestinians expected that the world would force a deal on Israel that, yesterday. Yahoo News. Israel's path to annexation is lined with legal thorns. Israel has vowed to quickly annex large parts of the occupied West Bank after getting a green light from President Donald Trump, whose newly unveiled Mideast, yesterday. Mondoist Jared Kushner taunts Palestinians because he wants them to reject his peace plan. Jared Kushner's nastiness toward Palestinians is no accident. It is designed to goad them into rejecting his peace plan, to pave the way for Israeli annexation. Yesterday. Arab News. Peace deal will not pass. Palestinian exiles vow Beirut. Angry Palestinian refugees in Lebanon set fire to American and Israeli flags in response to U.S. President Donald Trump's Middle East peace offer. Yesterday International. Israel Hayom Gantz says will present Trump's peace plan for Knesset approval next week. Blue and White Party leader Benny Gantz said Wednesday that he will present the U.S. administration's Middle East peace for the Knesset's approval next week. Yesterday. Oslo Accords versus Trump's vision. How U.S. Mideast plan differs from its predecessors. Last Sunday, the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, warned that it reserves the right to withdraw from the Oslo agreements, which regulate relations. Yesterday International. Leaning on Jordan, Jim Hansen on Trump's peace. DC Insider, Haider al-Shaqqa spoke with Jim Hansen, president at the Security Studies Group, to understand how Trump's peace plan for Palestine cool. Yesterday International. Arab News. OIC rights body rejects Trump's Middle East peace plan. Jeddah, a human rights body at the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, has rejected U.S. President Donald Trump's Middle East peace plan. His plan. Yesterday International. Associated Press. Indictment, a plan and a pardon. Israeli PM has a wild week. Moscow, app. When Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu left the White House after the unveiling of President Donald Trump's Mideast plan, which, 11 hours ago, Arab News questions emerge on Israel's West Bank annexation plans. Jerusalem. Questions surfaced Thursday over whether Israel would immediately seek to annex parts of the West Bank, after U.S. President Donald Trump's. Yesterday International. Jerusalem is not for sale, says Erdogan. The U.S. so-called Middle East peace plan is an occupation project, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said on Thursday. Speaking at the Fifth Anatolian. Yesterday International. Washington Post. Israeli settlements. The almost a tenth of Israel's Jews live in East Jerusalem and the West Bank, outside their country's recognized borders. The population of Jewish settlers in the West. Yesterday. Gatestone Institute. Trump Middle East plan, last chance for the Palestinians? Israel and the future Palestinian state could sign bilateral agreements and cooperate for their mutual benefit in many areas where Israeli expertise is recognized. 8 hours ago. We won't be uprooted, Mayor says Trump's plan to make Abu Dis new Palestinian capital not fair or honest. Mayor of Abu Dis, the small town envisioned as the new Palestinian capital in Donald Trump's Middle East peace plan, told RT that Jerusalem will always be. 19 hours ago. International. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas called Trump's plan the slap of the century after it was announced. Palestinians push for UN action over Trump Middle East plan. President Mahmoud Abbas to address UNSC on Palestinian rejection of the U.S. Middle East proposal within 2 weeks. Yesterday International. U.S. Ambassador reveals where God put Donald Trump, riles up social media. The diplomat delivered his opinion on the alleged role of the divine in Trump's career as the U.S. president unveiled his long-anticipated plan that aims to resolve, 5 hours ago. International. Annexation versus applying Israeli law in the West Bank, Jerusalem. If you've been reading the news carefully this week, you might have noticed two terms being used to describe what Israel's cabinet could soon. 18 hours ago, JNS.org Israelis and Palestinians consider how annexation of Jordan Valley could affect them. Both employers and workers believe that it could help them economically, though politically and socially is a different story altogether. Yesterday, Fox News: what sets Trump's Mideast peace plan apart from previous proposals? Experts weigh in the latest episode of Fox Nation's Deep Dive. 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮 sat down with a panel of experts to discuss President Trump's long-awaited Middle East peace, yesterday.
So we also read Trump to expand travel ban to 6 additional countries, official in the headlines. Rights groups slam expanded ban, which includes restrictions for Eritrea, Kyrgyzstan, Myanmar, Nigeria, Sudan and Tanzania. So Saudi Arabia is still not on the travel ban list. Reported by 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮. It's more about civil war in Iraq. That was also mentioned in that movie, basically. So I just decided to Google civil war Iran. Not that there is any. But perhaps some people would like to see that. And perhaps they're working on it. So they want an excuse. We've seen what most probably was the drone attack on the Cancer oil tanker with the hole above the waterline, and the eyewitness that saw a flying projectile, so that was not a mine. And many people think that the Cancer oil tanker was shot with a drone, and that's why they crashed a drone the day after or so, to cover it up in the mainstream media. Then if people would Google that drone, then they'd find the other drone that was downed. Palestinians push for UN action over Trump Middle East plan. President Mahmoud Abbas to address UNSC on Palestinian rejection of the US Middle East proposal within 2 weeks. Perhaps I'll read this article. Photo essay: Palestinians converge on Jordan Valley checkpoints to protest Trump plan. Reported by mondowise.net. Protests break out in Jordan against Trump's deal of the century. 𝓟-monitor.com. So that means protests in 2 countries basically converge on Jordan Valley checkpoints. They've protested, and in Jordan. Is that the same? Country in the Middle East. Jordan Valley checkpoints. So yeah, that's probably the same protest they both wrote about. Palestinians protest in Jerusalem against Trump's deal of the century video. Is it also Jordan? I doubt it. It's another country. But you have the Jordan River, so I don't really know. But it's clear, or at least they claim they've protested, but we watched this video, at least I watched it, and I scrolled through it, but I don't really see people carrying signs or doing other things that protesters do, for example, the yellow vests in Paris. but on this picture there are more people visible, so I could watch this again. So it doesn't look like a protest, at least not on this video, but this picture might indicate that there was a protest. People chanting slogans, holding banners, etc. What's this? They seem like workers that carry stuff, tree trunks or bread or whatever. Perhaps renewable energy. Well, I'm not discovering any protesters on the video. If you can see it, let me know what minute it is in the comments. Anyway, that's on Sputnik News. So we're gonna read Al Jazeera and then perhaps read the newer overview that may have double articles. And perhaps I'll just ponder upon the situation. Use a different strategy. So, qua coronavirus, people need to immunize themselves with colloidal silver and probiotics. Replace the good bacteria in your gut killed by the colloidal silver. And if you use aqua purificata destillata, distilled water, cleanest water you can get, and clean silver, 100% silver, or 99.99999% silver, then you cannot get 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮, blue skin, and that wouldn't be deadly. People can read up on that, but you wouldn't get it, you wouldn't become infected or become sick, as long as you take pure water and pure silver, and don't exceed the maximum dosage. Depends on the thickness of the silver, the colloid. And qua Ebola, colloidal silver also works. It's effective, and people can research this online. The medical cartel and the people that want to reduce the global population are trying to hide this because they cannot make money of a product people can grow or create at home, like colloidal silver. So these Rockefeller drug laws are illegal laws, you could argue, because it's illegal to block a working cure from the public. Millions of people die of alcohol yearly. Nobody ever died of using cannabis. And cannabis is not physically addictive, but it expands people's consciousness. Cannabis can also be eaten, it doesn't have to be smoked. So I'm setting the wrong example, basically. So qua Ebola, people must also immunize themselves with colloidal silver and use probiotics. Colloidal silver generator, $15 on eBay. I'd almost buy it myself, though I already have one. And to make it EMP resistant, we'd have to put it in a metal bin and ground that metal bin. The electromagnetic pulse would destroy electronic equipment. Don't know if a silver generator would still work after the nukes have gone off. So people can program themselves with the hypnosis to wake up when the air alarm goes off. I can let you hear what the one in the Netherlands sounds like. So know what to do when you hear this sound. Duck and cover. Alright. So that's the air alarm. And when it goes off, then it's best to have a helmet and a cellar to go below that blast wave. So ground zero, at ground zero there will be a sort of tidal wave or the explosion wave basically that wipes out everything in its path, everything above ground. So that's why it's best to stay underground. The underground is best. So duck and cover, wear a helmet if you have one. Maybe a good idea to get one if you don't have one yet. A gas mask with an NBC filter. Don't know if that's P3, if that's sufficient. Nuclear, biological, chemical. And it may be best to have a gas mask that covers your eyes also, and it doesn't melt away when exposed to warfare agents, chemicals and biological warfare agents. But it's more important to have a radiological water filter and storable food, because of the home quarantines that will follow. If you watch the movie, then you also see that millions of people will be looking for food. So you must also have weapons to defend yourself and your family against intruders and such. Military. A million dead Iraqi people. We've learned from previous wars to a certain extent, but because of the normalcy bias, many people think it will not happen. They're not prepared. And without a radiological water filter, if there would be a nuclear event, they die in a couple of months, tops. Because people need water almost daily, and food monthly practically. So people need more water than food. World War III deterrence, mutually assured destruction, even more assured with the Tesla plasma shield and directed energy weapons. So there are atomic, biological and chemical weapons and directed energy weapons, A, B, C, D. Atomic, biological, chemical, directed energy. And these directed energy weapons have made nuclear weapons obsolete. More about it in my previous broadcasts. So we really need to prevent a world war by any means necessary. And the Jesuits are a military order, and the Pope is not their leader. Okay, we can read this article, 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮. Good articles, nicely presented so people can read the text with the text-to-speech engine. Good videos also.
Palestinians push for UN action over Trump Middle East plan. President Mahmoud Abbas to address UNSC on Palestinian rejection of the U.S. Middle East proposal within 2 weeks. January 30, 2020. Palestinians push for UN action over Trump Middle East plan. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas called Trump's plan the slap of the century after it was announced. File, Mohammed 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮. More on Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Not an inch. Palestinians at Al-Aqsa vow to fight Trump's plan today. Why are Arab states divided in the face of Trump's plan? Today a joke. Palestinians slammed Trump's proposal for new capital today. Will the U.S. Middle East plan boost or undermine peace? Today Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas will visit the United Nations within 2 weeks to address the Security Council on his rejection of the new U.S. Middle East plan, his ambassador to the body has said. At that time, a draft resolution will be submitted to the Council, Riyad Mansour told reporters on Wednesday, without specifying a date for the visit. More, Trump's Middle East plan announcement. Why now? Anger in Palestine over Trump plan, but protests see low turnout. World leaders react to Trump's Middle East plan. U.S. President Donald Trump unveiled his long-delayed plan, referred to as the deal of the century, to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict on Tuesday. But Palestinians called the proposal dead on arrival and Abbas reacted with 1,000 no's to the announcement. We will try our best with our friends to have the strongest possible draft resolution and to receive the strongest and largest possible voting in favor of that resolution, Mansour said. He did not give details of what might be in the text. Opinion-trapped and voiceless, the Palestinians depicted in Trump's plan. Ahmed 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮 by Ahmed 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮. Of course we would like to see a strong, large opposition to this Trump plan, he said, with Tunisian ambassador to the UN Monsef Bahati, currently serving a 2-year term on the 15-member Security Council, standing beside him. However, the U.S. is likely to veto any such resolution, diplomats said, allowing the Palestinians to take the draft text to the 193-member UN General Assembly, where a vote would show how Trump's plan has been received internationally. Mansour said Abbas would use his visit to the UN to put before the entire international community the reaction of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian leadership against this onslaught against the national rights of the Palestinian people by the Trump administration. Netanyahu in Russia. Israel's UN mission signaled on Tuesday that it was preparing for UN action to be launched by the Palestinian delegation, saying in a statement that it was working to thwart these efforts, and will lead a concerted diplomatic campaign with the U.S. Trump's plan, which he announced alongside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Washington, D.C., describes Jerusalem as the undivided capital of Israel and promises a new capital on the outskirts of eastern Jerusalem for a proposed state of Palestine. Trump's controversial Middle East plan follows decades of conflict. 147. It would also give Israel control over the illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank and the strategic Jordan Valley. On Thursday, Netanyahu arrived in Moscow, where he is expected to present the Middle East proposal to Russian President Vladimir Putin. I'd like to speak to you and hear your insights and see how we can combine all our forces for security and peace, Netanyahu told Putin at the start of their meeting. You're actually the first leader I'm speaking with after my visit to Washington about President Trump's deal of the century, he added. The Russian leader did not mention the plan in his public remarks. Russia has been pursuing a greater role as a mediator between Israelis and Palestinians in recent years. Putin met with both Netanyahu and Abbas last week in Jerusalem and Bethlehem, respectively. Reporting from Moscow, Al Jazeera's 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮 said the Russian government has so far taken a very soft tone since the U.S.-Israeli plan was announced. Russia has always supported the Arab Peace Initiative, which included Israel's withdrawal of territories that it occupied since 1967, and had always promoted a role in mediating in the conflict together with the UN, European Union and the US, and definitely wants to include the Palestinians, but its very careful tone shows that Putin doesn't seem to want to go on a collision course with Netanyahu right now, she said. Separately, ahead of Netanyahu's visit, Putin pardoned an Israeli woman, Naama Issachar, whose sentencing to more than 7 years in prison for possession of a few grams of marijuana at a Moscow airport last year rattled relations between their countries. Does Trump's U.S.-Israeli plan make Middle East peace impossible? The bottom line, does Trump's U.S.-Israeli plan make Middle East peace impossible? Source, Al Jazeera and news agencies.
Netanyahu in Russia. Trump's controversial Middle East plan follows decades of conflicts.
When we look at President Trump's proposed plan, it's important to remember how Palestinian territory has vanished over the past century. And if we wind back to before the British mandate for Palestine in 1917, this was the map. Just 3% of the population were Jews, but over the next 30 years of British rule, Jewish immigration increased. And when the mandate expired in 1948, the State of Israel was created, and its military expelled at least 750,000 Palestinians from their homeland. Then, during the 1967 war, Israel expanded its territory into the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip, occupying all of historic Palestine. In the 1990s, under the Oslo Accords, Palestinians were given some powers of self-rule, but remained under Israeli military occupation. Since then, hundreds of thousands of Israelis have moved into settlements built on that occupied land, which is against international law. And this is how a future Palestinian state could look under Trump's proposed plan. Israeli territory would separate the two main Palestinian centres of Gaza and the occupied West Bank, though there'd be a tunnel between them. But all of these Israeli settlements dotted inside Palestinian territory would be recognised by the US. And while the plan would create a capital for the Palestinians, it's not East Jerusalem. It's in the eastern outskirts, cut off from the Old City and the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound by a concrete separation wall and Israeli checkpoints. Trump says Jerusalem will be Israel's undivided capital. Groups like Amnesty International have rejected the plan, saying it would exacerbate tensions and endorse Israel's half-century of occupation.
Wow. The bottom line, does Trump's US-Israeli plan make Middle East peace impossible? Well, I've covered these allies of Palestine in my previous broadcast. Iran and Russia. So if you give them self-rule, self-determination, essentially it would be the two-state solution, then each country with their own allies, each country with its own ally could end up in a world war. When they'd go to war with each other, then the ally countries would also be involved, is the theory. And if they exclude that possibility in an agreement that the ally countries of Israel and Palestine may not intervene if they go to war with each other, then a world war cannot happen. But that may be their actual goal, divide and conquer. So if you think that's not the case, Skype Prologic999 and we can do a broadcast about this. Recently someone called me, so perhaps I will upload that broadcast soon if I can remember it. But I consider this stuff more important, so let's watch the video.
Hi, I'm Steve Clements, and I have a question. Will Trump's deal of the century actually bring peace to the Middle East, or will it bring the exact opposite? Let's get to the bottom line. So what do we know about the so-called ultimate deal between Palestinians and Israelis? For starters, Palestinians weren't part of it. The leaders who made it, U.S. President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, are both facing legal troubles, and they're both in the middle of election campaigns. Instead of trying to find common ground between the two parties, it sounds more like a series of take it or leave it suggestions. So is the deal of the century really the biggest dead deal of the century? Is it a well-timed distraction for Trump and Netanyahu? Is the point even to try to make peace in the Middle East? Fortunately, we have three people with us who have the answers. 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮, a human rights attorney and one of the founders of 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮. She joins us from Rutgers University in New Jersey, where she's an assistant professor of Africana Studies. And here in Washington, we have Dan Arbel, former Israeli diplomat and negotiator, and currently at the Center for Israeli Studies at American University, and Shibli Telhami, the Anwar Sadat Professor for Peace and Development at the University of Maryland. Thank you all so much for being with us. Noura, let me start with you. Let me ask you, as this deal is laid out, what are the fundamental and core principles that you would hope to see in this plan if it were to have any traction whatsoever?
I think that the most important thing about this plan is that we know almost everything in it even before it's revealed to us because of what the Trump administration has done since 2016. They have closed the PLO office in Washington, D.C., withdrawn funding from UNRWA, the UN Relief Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees. They have moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. They have basically written on the wall for us that they are not interested in peace. The core principles of this are even made more obvious by the fact that they call it a deal, except the party that they want to make a deal with is not even at the table. This would be absolutely laughable if it weren't so dangerous. And what the fundamental basis of it is how normalized Palestinian subjugation, how normalized Palestinian violence against Palestinians has been that we're even contemplating this, and that there aren't editorial boards across the United States not just decrying what the Trump administration is trying to present to the international community, but also to have a moment of reckoning of how previous U.S. administrations have laid the groundwork to make this moment possible for the Trump administration.
Noura, you've made an important point about the complacency about Israel-Palestine issues. I've just been reading a Martin Indyk article that Martin Indyk, of course, is a former AIPAC official, former ambassador, Middle East envoy, and he basically writes in the Wall Street Journal, he says, hard as it is for me to admit, the two-state solution to the Palestinian problem is not a vital American interest. He's been part of the Palestine-Israel industrial complex for a lot of time, and he's basically been arguing it doesn't matter anymore. So what do you think is driving the complacency? I know you care, but why aren't others caring?
I don't think this is just about complacency. This is about the way that we have learned to understand this issue. We have understood it as somehow a problem of peace talks, intractable parties that can't get along and sit at a table, when on the ground, in fact, the power disparity is so severe between Israel, the U.S.'s self-described most unique ally in the Middle East, the only nuclear power in the Middle East, the 11th most powerful military in the world, and a stateless people who has been forced to endure a situation of forced removal, of discrimination, of segregation, of violence, the imprisonment of their children. And so if Americans understood that this was a situation of fundamental human rights of our lifetime, which the U.S. is not just a witness to, but is actually a third party to because of the unequivocal military, financial, and diplomatic aid that we've provided since 1967, they might have a different reaction than lamenting whether or not there's two states. And in fact, on the ground, I was hoping, and obviously not surprised, that Indyk would admit that there is no two-state solution. Israel has single-handedly torpedoed the possibility of a two-state solution by encroaching on increasing Palestinian lands to the point where now there is a one-state reality to anybody willing to look at a map or visit. And so the problem that we're facing is not whether the viability of a Palestinian state, but really the viability of Palestinian livelihood, freedom, ability to exist outside of de jure segregation and apartheid.
Thank you. Dan, we're going to be debating the contours of this plan as we understand all the components of it that come forward. But let me ask you, as a former Israeli diplomat who negotiated these kinds of deals, one question always comes up, and that's timing. Why now?
It's the million-dollar question, Steve, and I think that when we look at this, we cannot escape from asking why now, because this has been 3 years in the making, and clearly, from what all it looks and sounds, is that it all has to do with domestic politics. All politics are domestic, and this is the case right now. In Israel, there are elections in 5 weeks, and this is clearly a gift to Mr. Netanyahu, who's been advocating a very tough and strong position on the Israeli-Palestinian front, hinting that he would move ahead to annex some territories and apply Israeli sovereignty in some areas in the West Bank. Clearly, the Trump administration has gone out of its way to support Mr. Netanyahu in his quest. On the other hand, Trump himself, as we see, the #1 issue, the news cycle is dominated in recent weeks and days by the impeachment process and the impeachment trial in the Senate. And obviously, he wishes to deflect some of the attention of the impeachment to issues like foreign policy, where he's perhaps is seen stronger, and also play to his base, the evangelical community, and perhaps more conservative Jews that would support him in his 2020 campaign.
General Gantz is in town as well, and I guess this is being released in part. He's a rival to Prime Minister Netanyahu in the elections that are coming up. Is there any difference between those two with regard to what this potential deal might look like?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, Gantz met Mr. Trump yesterday, and after his meeting, flew back to Israel. So he's, by now, back in Israel, and he's not going to participate in the events taking place today in the White House. Gantz did welcome the Trump plan, some elements of it, but the difference is that he believes that timing is of essence, and there's no need to move on it right now. And he asked Mr. Trump to start looking at it, dealing with it, perhaps discussing it after the elections in Israel on March 2nd. A second component in Gantz's position is the fact that he wants to do it in coordination with Arab partners, with countries like Jordan, Egypt, and others. He doesn't want to go ahead and annex the Jordan Valley without having prior understandings and an agreement with the King of Jordan, for instance. So he wants a coordinated move, and he did not really address the specifics of it. It's not clear where he stands on particular annexation of particular territories. So we have to wait and see what his specific position is.
Shibli, Noura thank you.
With
Noura
all
just
due
laid.
respect,
Yeah. Go ahead, Noura.
With all due respect, and before we hear from Shibli, I just want to raise something that I don't want to normalize in this conversation. What we're hearing about Benny Gantz is that he wants to coordinate with other Arab partners in order to somehow collude against the Palestinians. Jordan has entered into a permanent peace agreement with Israel since 1994 and ceded any kind of claims over the West Bank, which is a historic claim that it's been making. So the fact that we are somehow posing Gantz's willingness to coordinate with Arab partners as making him better than Netanyahu is basically normalizing the fact that Palestinians aren't able to represent themselves, that rather than Israel and the U.S. imposing this on Palestinians, that they would collude with Arab partners in order to do it. All equations, everything times 0 equals 0. But it's, all equations lead to a very inequitable outcome for Palestinians.
No,
and a lack of representation.
I agree with Noura about one thing, but when I said Arab partners, I also meant the Palestinians, meaning that Gantz did signal in recent months that he is going to reach out at a certain point to Mahmoud Abbas and will be wanting to at least start some sort of dialogue. I'm not sure it's a negotiation. I'm not sure he's going to play to the desires, aspirations of Palestinians, but he did include a dialogue with Palestinians. It's part of his policy when he becomes prime minister.
So Shibli, Noura and Dan have shared with us the fact that there's no longer an equilibrium, if there ever was one in these discussions. There used to be if you talk to any Arab ambassador, Jordanian, Saudi, and you also talk to a certain wing of the Israeli establishment, you generally knew the contours of a deal. And this White House has basically forfeited the question of Jerusalem's capital to Israel. It is basically said we will no longer look at the West Bank, as Noura just said, as independent, as something that can be annexed into Israel. And so my question to you is, knowing today the facts on the ground as they are, and you have done a lot of public attitude research on this, is there an equilibrium point that can be reachieved either by this administration or a future one or not? And what would be required to get there?
Let me answer this a little bit differently and talk about this lack of equilibrium a little bit differently. Let me start by saying this is obviously not a peace deal. It's not even a deal. This is a plan to implement a right-wing Israeli agenda. It is a plan to legitimize settlements, to legitimize control of Jerusalem, to legitimize annexation of parts of the West Bank, and probably to rule out forever, in that view, the emergence of a Palestinian state that's genuinely sovereign. This is a plan. It's not a deal, and it's not a peace deal, to be clear. But let's think about the principle, which is this asymmetry. Kushner speaks often from the beginning, as he did as the Washington Post
Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, who has been leading this process.
Speaks of essentially, let's deal with the reality as it is. That the fact that there is this asymmetry, and the Palestinians are just going to have to accept the fact that they're weaker, and they should take whatever's offered to them because they're going to get weaker in the future. Think about this for a minute. First of all, this is rewarding violations of international law and encouraging violations of international law, because what is part of the asymmetries that we're talking about now that are being essentially legitimized by this plan is Israeli control of settlements that were built on the West Bank that are considered illegal by the international community, that were opposed by every American president up until Trump. And so we're saying, okay, now it's a reality, let's accept it. So it's an invitation to other people who have power to essentially ignore international law and encode, the takeover. Let's say if you send the message to Ukraine about Russian control and say, get over it. You're the weaker party. Get over it. International law doesn't matter.
Hasn't this administration been sending that signal to Ukraine? I'm asking you. Donald Trump does not seem to be a guy who spends up at night worrying about international law.
It's even worse than that. Okay, it's even worse than the international law. Let me tell you why. Because here I'm saying, okay, this is like ignoring international or encouraging violation of international law. But it's worse than that, because the asymmetry of power, there's the fact that you describe, which is that Israel is now extremely strong. It controls the territories. The Palestinians are weak. The Arabs are distracted. Yes. The international community is unable to do anything in implementing international law. Israel is very strong. But why is Israel very strong and has gotten away with the settlements over these years? It is principally because of American support. For example, shielding Israel at the UN with the employment of veto more than on any other issue internationally, and giving Israel cutting-edge technology, unique support, separate from the financial support. That's important. That's not critical. What gives Israel the control, the dominance, technologically, militarily, is the fact that the U.S. does give Israel this technological edge. So the fact that there is this asymmetry is of Americans doing. It isn't in part. Israelis, you have to give them credit. They built a very powerful army on their own. But the cutting edge, the dominance, comes mostly from American support. So in essence, there is an American responsibility. It's not just that, you basically have to deal with this issue. But America is implicated in this asymmetry that we're using now as a basis.
I get that, but let me just ask Dan and Noura a question, building off of what you just said. The thing that has always struck me about Israeli politics is that there have been different wings in the establishment, and that there's always been a debate, one about the two-state solution and keeping Israel both democratic and a democracy, versus creating an apartheid state where essentially you have a subjugated class embedded in that government. That's part of the issue. And the second is Israel's long-term security in the neighborhood, and confusing that with maybe short-term impulses. And so, Dan, just very quickly, is there a constituency that understands that Israel's long-term security in the region is going to be tied to a course different than the one Prime Minister Netanyahu is laying out, and perhaps that is laid out in this so-called deal of the century?
In general, Israelis have been moving away from the two-state solution, but still, if you have, according to Shibley's polls even, you would see that it is still the #1 preferred option of Israelis.
By how much?
About, I think, less than 50%, something around 40 to 44% of Israelis would opt for the two-state solution. About 20% or so, or around 20 to 25%, would opt for a one-state reality, or variation of one state. But still, asked about what would be the best option, a greater number of Israelis support the two-state solution. Having said that, they have moved away from it, and as there has not been offered as an alternative by the current leadership in recent years, it's kind of dormant. It's not there. And the Israelis are looking at the reality. The situation in the West Bank is pretty calm. The situation in Gaza is pretty contained. And they believe that they could continue with the status quo as it is, so it's not an urgent issue. It has certainly been downgraded in the Israeli priority list. But of course, incidents, events that may develop in the aftermath of this
In my previous broadcast, I covered all these possibilities, these options, one-state solution, two-state solution, and other options, solutions for Israel, Palestine, to live in peace and harmony. And he's talking about what Israel would favor, but what would the Palestinian people favor? Perhaps a one-state solution, equal rights for all, a passport and the right of return. Without equal rights, I think you're going to have friction, that people won't accept not having equal rights. They want to feel equals and as dignified human beings.
plan that would be introduced on the ground may impact that. It may bring the Israeli-Palestinian issue more closer to home for many Israelis and may make them look at it in a different way.
Right, Nora, I know you're in New Jersey, but
so Wikipedia also makes clear that annexation is generally considered to be an illegal act, and 28 EU membership countries disagree with Trump's annexation plan, I think. I'm gonna check my channel, 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮. That's faster than searching through my text. Everybody can watch the video Greta Thunberg's Lies, Soros and Al Gore's global warming hoax equals eco carbon tax money scam on this channel and on 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮. 28. All 28 EU membership states reject Israeli sovereignty over the Golan and slam Trump's proclamation. 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮 on YouTube is the name of the channel. 3 views 9 months ago. So this is my channel 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮, and this is Perfect Society. So check it out. Some other interesting broadcasts. Wuhan coronavirus. SARS killed by colloidal silver. Designer virus cure. So people can research this themselves on the web. And keep in mind there are people that are misinforming the public, disinforming them deliberately. To misdirect them as much as possible to reduce the global population to 500 million. A quote that I've been mentioning in chats recently. The good news is the population growth in the country goes down. Bill Gates quote. Just FYI. So that's the broadcast Investigate Bill and Melinda Gates, who funded Peerbright, which patented a coronavirus. but the funding was for a different project. So they can lie, the AI can lie, and trust no one, nothing is what it seems, survival is all. Transforming reactive to proactive behavior begets lasting fulfillment. The Rothberg quote. I also read something about Trump in relation to Kabbalah. 80 million on Trump's head and fake attempt planned, impossible scam. 15 views. I was showing these pictures. These pictures were for this video, the picture slideshow. Of course, that's a fake picture. Trump wasn't driving in a car with the gun pointing, hanging out, etc. The Kushner-Trump peace plan World War. That was 2 weeks ago. World War III deterrence and things that point in the direction of a planned World War 2019 is the date the video was made, 2 months ago. So people can check all these other broadcasts on trysomething.vegetarian, but live streams are on Perfect Society. Atmospheric heaters harp, quote, used to give the illusion anthropogenic global warming is real, anthropogenic man-made. So they give that illusion by modifying the jet stream. Also, I think that the floods and quakes in Iran were no coincidence. But I'm not accusing anyone without proper evidence. I'm just showing what other people have produced. And all these facts put together point. They paint a picture basically. And it's a bloody picture. Population reduction is its name. The name of the painting. Though some call it population control. Let's continue watching the video on Al Jazeera. So be prepared, that's all I can say at the moment. Be prepared.
But I can feel your frustration over this deal that's coming through, and I guess I'd like to ask you, as you hear it, what do you think are the options that exist for the Palestinians after they hear what's coming forward? Because as you have laid out, they've not been part of the discussion, not been part of the negotiations, and this is happening to them largely. You know, what's the reaction likely to be?
So I want to respond also to what Shibli and Dan presented by agreeing with what Shibli was saying and adding that this isn't just about international law and any concept of American jurisprudence. A contract which is imposed on a party that's left with no choice is known as duress and is therefore void. It cannot bind any of the parties, number one. Number two, the responsibility of the Americans, I agree with Shibli completely, but also, and this dovetails with the question you're asking, what is the responsibility of the Palestinians? For the Palestinian official leadership, at least since the late 1970s, it's been a very explicit goal to align itself with the United States and with the belief that it is the only superpower that can deliver a Palestinian state. They got that opportunity in 1988, and yet now we have over 2 decades of empirical evidence that demonstrates the U.S. is not an honest broker, will not deliver that state, and our Palestinian continuing faith in the United States is actually the responsibility and the failure of the Palestinian leadership to create other alternatives and to pivot pivot elsewhere. Even though we do not know, and there have been no other actors that have jumped up to take up the space, nobody wants this issue. European states don't want it. There have been no other diplomatic alternatives. But there has been an alternative on the ground that Palestinians themselves have been building. Since 2005, Palestinians have been waging a boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaign. Since March 30th,
my theory is now that we should program ourselves and our fellow humans not to see our fellow humans as the enemy. I think religion can be a reason. Religion is an abomination, basically. I've covered it in previous broadcasts. The pedo-incest Bible and pedo-incest Quran. And the Freud quote, religion is an illusion. I can look for the full quote. Religion is an illusion, and it derives its strength from the fact that it falls in with our instinctual desires. Sigmund Freud, in his book New Introductory Lectures on Psychoanalysis, 1933. But the Kennedy quote is better. Mankind must put an end to war before war puts an end to mankind. I think the John F. Kennedy quote is. And another one, those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. Kennedy, 1962. So I've also covered the former Mossad motto, by way of deception. I put it on the nuclear torpedo slideshow. This has a deterrent effect, of course. So think about it, we don't need world war. We need universal peace, or at least world peace. With all these weapons of mass destruction surrounding us all. The Russians have more nukes than the Americans in the nuclear torpedo that generates 90-meter high tsunami, formerly tidal waves. There it is, Poseidon intercontinental nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed, autonomous torpedo. Compared to the harpsichord. So we can review the rest of the video. I think I can play piano with text that is read, but I can't do it with video because that's altering the video.
2018, Palestinians in Gaza have been protesting every single week with almost the sure case that they will be shot and even killed with near impunity across the world, trying to signal an alternative trajectory of building, leveraging a different source of power, a different message of freedom that we should pivot away from. And we should be listening to that because it precisely dovetails with what Dan was saying. The reason that Israelis are about to enter into their third election in almost a one-year cycle, they have not once made Palestine or Palestinians an electoral issue. it just doesn't come up. Why?
Right.
Because there's no cause to it, as Dan has pointed out. And in fact, because there's impunity for them at the Security Council, there's no punishment for anything that they do. Palestinians are out of sight, out of mind. And instead of applying pressure, now Trump has a new executive order that is equating criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. This is a moment of reckoning for Americans to take responsibility for what we've been doing and to change the status quo.
So you asked the question about the short-term interest and the long-term interest here, and obviously.
So Trump also undid a law of Obama about reporting drone strike deaths. So they are not reported anymore either.
I don't see this deal as a peace deal that's going to benefit anyone, including ultimately the Israelis. But put that aside. But
so they're in violation of international law, and it also has to do with apartheid, segregation, etc.
one of my worries, one of my big worries in all this is not that this is going to become internationally accepted. It won't. Everybody's going to turn it down. It is going to empower.
So there'll be a collective shrug. So listen to Trump here and ask yourself if this sounds like an endorsement.
This is an opportunity. We'll see what happens. Whatever it is, it is.
That doesn't sound like much of a presidential endorsement of his own plan.
Although, of course, as Dan did say, it does help Netanyahu politically probably in March. I'm not sure how much today, by the way, he was indicted. And so, the guy is going to face trial. And he will be standing next to Trump revealing this plan the day he is indicted for corruption. So it's, that story itself is unfolding and telling. But I've got to tell you my biggest worry. My biggest worry is not that the U.S. does this. I worry about it because it's going to empower a lot of extremists to do all kinds of things on the ground. I worry about that in terms of
extremists where? I mean,
Israeli extremists. It's going to empower, obviously, more settlement. It's going to empower annexation potentially. It's going to empower. I worry about issues related to ethnic cleansing eventually in this conflict. And we have, we'll see what comes out of the plan. But my biggest worry is that this is a plan that is anchored in religious narrative. If you look at who are the people who actually, champion this plan mostly, particularly the U.S. envoy to Israel, David Friedman, pro-settlement. If you look at the terms he's invoked, whether it's over Jerusalem or over settlements about religious narratives that gives Israel right. It's one should respect.
I mean, as Dan mentioned, evangelicals in the U.S.
Or
There's another dimension of that
Pence
here when you look at the domestic drivers of President Trump's
and
interests.
Pence has used that, and everybody should respect religion. I have no problem with respecting everybody's religious claims, but you can't use those for sovereign claim in a political environment in the 21st century. And if you
basically, I keep clear, I'm anti-religion, not anti-religious people. There are wonderful religious people out there, and it's a matter of programming, but because there is no hereafter, it's a vicious lie, and it can kill and has killed millions of people. We've seen the Inquisition, 50 million innocent people tortured to death, and the pedophilia associated with both the Quran and the Bible. And because it's based on the lie that there is a hereafter and a good God, and that falls in with that AI, the voice of God weapon. Religion is extremely dangerous and a population reduction tool used by these people. It's psychological warfare, part of real warfare. So we can always wonder who created these religions.
You define the conflict as a conflict over religious claims. This is going to be with us for a long time, and there will be seeds of further conflict down the road, even bigger than we're facing.
Dan, we've just got a couple of minutes left, and I would love to get a snapshot from each of you. I hear frustration from all three of you on this, and you're all coming at it from slightly different perspective. I'd just like to get a quick snapshot from you as an Israeli negotiator, as a diplomat who thinks hard about these strategic frames. What should a deal look like? What aspirationally needs to be on the table so that we can give our audience an idea of what a great deal could look like from your perspective?
So there has to be some reciprocity there. It can be attentive to Israeli concerns and needs. At the same time, it must take into account Palestinian aspirations, Palestinian interests as well. If the Palestinians are not going to show up at the table, then what's the point of this exercise? It seems like a futile exercise. And so it's important to have a more balanced position and take into account.
So I think we need to focus on these annexations. Are they in violation of international law? What will the UN do? Are they a bunch of Luciferians that they control? Perhaps we shouldn't expect too much from the UN either. And then there are the allies, all lies, somebody wrote in the chat. Ally countries, supposedly. So focusing on not the Inquisition, but the annexations that are going on. And, like I showed, 28 EU member countries disagreed with Trump's annexations.
The positions of all parties and not just the Israeli position. As much as, for me, an Israeli, it's not a common position to express, but that's what I believe.
Thank you. Nora, let me get your quick snapshot of what deal we should be putting on the table to give people something that we should.
And at this point, I can also mention Putin, of course, the ally of Iran. And I've mentioned the quote many times in my broadcasts. And before that, Medvedev also made clear attack on Iran will endanger the entire world in Haaretz. And many people leave out Putin and what the ally of Iran would do if Iran would be attacked, perhaps disproportionately. But for example, if a submarine would disappear or two ships would collide. And I'm also wondering about Russian troops. If the US is sending so many troops to the Middle East, is Russia doing anything in that direction as well? I'd have to Google that as well. But these are just ideas people can check for themselves. It's just best to be prepared. And to think about, we can always think about what we can do ourselves. Protests, activism, legally boycott, companies involved in military and in population reduction, and things that are detrimental to humanity, to ourselves. We should be careful who we fund, who we give our money to. And also the state basically has to be questioned. It's illegal to make these killer vaccines mandatory. In Italy, that was the first country where this happened. Some say all roads lead to Rome. And the second one was France, Macron. So in these countries, you could argue it's legal for people to organize a tax revolt. When millions of people stop paying taxes together, then they can put them all in jail. And that's a way to force the government to comply with international law. And I don't hear many people about it, but protests might be what they want, because they're paid protesters. Protest on Demand and the other one I've covered in my broadcasts prove beyond any reasonable doubt that there are paid protesters. So that's a fact, not a theory. So then they're transgressing people's right to physical integrity, people's most important basic human right. And I've given a list of reasons why it is illegal to make these vaccines mandatory, whether they're killer vaccines or not. People have that right to physical integrity, to get it in people's bloodstream. which also reaches the brain. If there are nano-death chippies in there that can cause heart attacks or brain bleedings, then these companies are legally immune. To get it in your bloodstream, they need to make that port d'entrée a hole in people's skin, and that is a violation of the right to physical integrity. And the killer vaccines cannot be effective. The killer vaccines cannot be effective. Vaccines cannot be effective because the mutated version of Ebola and coronavirus cannot be the same as the coronavirus and Ebola in the vial, in the vaccine. That's one reason. You also have the list of pandemics caused by vaccinations. And in my broadcasts about this, I give cutting-edge information. And there are other pioneers on YouTube. And perhaps one day it will become huge. Some people have their jobs, they don't have time to study the internet, websites and libraries, etc. all the time, and to follow what's going on as accurately as people that don't have a job, that are 80% disabled because of a non-contagious blood disease like myself. So I sort of feel it a bit my duty also to inform the public about these things. And the people that advocate population reduction must be arrested immediately. They should be prosecuted, not rewarded or applauded. The state has to protect and serve its citizens, not to reduce the global population and tyrannize people into submission with directed energy torture weapons.
Should be aspirationally thinking about that we don't get. Just a few seconds.
We have to be uncompromising on Palestinian freedom. That means the right of return. That means being able to move freely and be with.
So I will repeat these things until these people have been arrested, and the book quotes advocating a population reduction and $1 million Georgia Guidestones are removed.
With our families, and you said that we're all frustrated. I actually have more hope than frustration, because for the first time ever, 8 out of 10 Democratic candidates boycotted the AIPAC conference and attended J Street only to say that they would condition aid to Israel. That is the shift that we need to create, to address the balance of power between Palestinians and Israel, in order to usher a framework which Palestinians have been laying out for the world since 1968, which is a vision of a one-state solution where they aren't dominated by a religious national supremacy.
Ŝibli, final word.
You know, I think it's certainly the debate shouldn't be on 2 states, 1 state. It is about independence and freedom and equality for both Israelis and Palestinians, and certainly end of the occupation. I don't care what form that takes, but that's what it takes to get stability and peace in the region.
I want to thank all of you for a very thoughtful conversation on a very toxic and complicated issue. So thank you. From Rutgers University.
And equality about
Ŝibli, final word.
You know, 1 state. It is. I think it's certainly the debate shouldn't be on 2 states, 1 state. It is about independence and freedom and equality for both Israelis and Palestinians, and certainly end of the occupation. I don't care what form that takes, but that's what it takes to get stability and peace in the region.
I want to thank all of you for a very thoughtful conversation on a very toxic and complicated issue. So thank you. From Rutgers University in New Jersey, human rights attorney 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮, and here in Washington, D.C., former Israeli diplomat Dan Arbel, and University of Maryland professor Ŝibli Tilghman. Thank you so much, and I hope you'll join us again as we wrestle with these issues down the road. Thank you. Thank you. So what's the bottom line? I've been thinking a lot lately about the Israel-Palestine conflict and a viable future for both as sort of a Rubik's Cube. There is a solution to a Rubik's Cube. I can just never figure out what they are. But it can be tough to align all the rows and colors to work. Today, the Trump White House is aligning just the rows that Prime Minister Netanyahu cares about. That's not a way to peace and not a way to long-term security. We didn't hear confidence in Trump's plan, not even from President Trump himself. What is happening today is being driven by domestic politics in the U.S.-Israel, not by a higher cause or purpose. And that's, unfortunately, the bottom line.
Alright, there's an Al Jazeera, or Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera. Okay, I'm rolling. This was the whole broadcast basically. People can leave comments in the chat or Skype Prologic 999 if they want to do a live broadcast. It's a relatively new channel, so I'm still building up viewers. I've recently added playlists at the end of broadcasts. And when you click on that, then you get a selection of videos that I think are interesting in relation to that subject. But I'm going for what I think is most important, and at the moment I think that's preventing World War III. That's number one, because the damage it can do is the biggest. Number two is spreading colloidal silver flyers at airports where people from Ebola infected countries fly in, and also corona infected countries, but it's airborne, and it's we can watch the map. There are several live maps also of the coronavirus. So I'm just going to do what I feel like, what I think is most important. First, watch the live dashboard if there's anybody writing anything in the chat. No, zero watching again. Weird. Well, theoretically it will go up at a certain point, and theoretically it's possible that people are attacked with directed energy weapons, that they don't allow them to watch my broadcast. And that everybody was hypnotized at night. And only people that have heard my hypnosis have self-control. So people can do self-hypnosis and put in it that no one can hypnotize you without your written permission, and that you never kill yourself. When things get too bad, then you can still do that anyway, but once you do it, there's no way back. Then there's eternal nothingness, no eternal darkness. So it won't be perceived by us. And then if we'd be resurrected, which is possible because time travel is possible, then I hope that excusez-moi, hybrid insects of DARPA that the righteous are resurrected, not murderers involved in killing their fellow humans in violation of that commandment, thou shalt not kill your believer. That's 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮 in Hebrew. So pikuach nefesh, I left that out in a previous broadcast, is a Jewish concept. You may break any commandment to save a human life except 3 cardinal sins. And thou shalt not kill is at the heart of the commandments. So the other commandments are based on that. Your life is the most important thing. And other people's lives is too. So life, the people above all, looking at other countries that are going better than our own country in some respects, and then making the adaptations necessary. And also, I think globalism can also be a good thing. That the evil is imperialism, nations that try to invade other nations and steal the cancer oil, no blood for cancer oil. And the third thing, besides coronavirus, Ebola, that is most important to prevent is the carbon tax scam of Al Gore, paid for by George Soros, Yale University. So I'm not blaming that on Greta Thunberg, on the youth, but the grown-ups that are behind it. Because Netherlands has to pay $1 trillion, that's 60,000 euros per Dutch citizen, if they want to become climate neutral, etc. And the law, is there a new law? Anyway, the judge ruled that they have to try to reach a 25% reduction, but there is no punishment if they don't reach that goal, for as far as I know. So it's natural global warming and cooling, natural warm periods and ice ages. So global warming is real, global cooling is real, and so is modifying the jet stream with ionospheric heaters punching holes in the Earth's ionosphere, and cancer cell phone radiation heating up your eyeball with about 2 degrees Celsius, and space travel, though they might claim they're not using chlorine-based propellants anymore. Is anybody checking that? In reality, chlorine breaks down the ozone layer. And then there's Project Cloverleaf. Cancer chemtrails are not contrails. It's a vicious lie that they're still trying to spread. Their official story. It's Project Cloverleaf, and before 1998, before Project Cloverleaf started, there were no long white lines in the sky, as we can see on video and picture material before Project Cloverleaf. And also the cloud seeding patterns make clear, and the fact that it's Project Cloverleaf, that this is a chemtrail that we're seeing and not a contrail. The Open Sky Treaty. So theoretically they may be spreading corona, virus and Ebola in chemtrails. So I hope there are people that test regularly what is present in our rainwater, that get it analyzed in a lab. Perhaps the state should do that daily. Get someone to collect rainwater and analyze the ingredients daily. If there are designer viruses in it, or altered blood plasma, or ethylene diploramide, besides the 80% cancer-causing barium, then you know it's not alright. And that's good to know. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. So lies don't increase people power, they make people weaker. And give their lives in legal wars, getting medals for killing their fellow humans. So where have we gone wrong in programming ourselves? Well, who should I ask? Perhaps President Ahmadinejad, or Abbas, or Zarif, perhaps. Trump. I'm thinking about a bad joke, and I think I'm not going to make it. But perhaps I should talk about it. So I didn't write, are they going to waterboard Trump, in the chat, because I'm against torture, basically. So I think that's not going to happen. Innocent till proven guilty in the court of law. If you accept that, then you know. You could be alright in your eyes. I shouldn't joke about these things, perhaps. But this is the free base show, say whatever pops into your brain, idea, show. No. Some people might want to see an Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but if it endangers the world with world war, then it's best to put an end to these things, to relieve the pressure rather than build up pressure, etc. That's what I think. We need peace, not war. And that there are people that benefit from war financially, and they accumulate wealth and power with these illegal wars. And there is state-sponsored terrorism, supposedly on both sides. And there are Masonic lodges in China, Russia, and Iran, etc. And then I have to combine all these ideas and present a nice strudel or something. Why is it giving me these ideas? Theoretically, they could be my own ideas. Trying to criticize people. But people don't want critique, they want to hear how awesome they are and how they did the right thing and that they should get more money and love and our support. And how they should be made rulers of the world. And we should become their humble servants. Yes. No, I'm kidding. Anyway. Slavery is forbidden, and that's gonna stay the same, because millions of people know the law, they know certain aspects of it, they know they have a right to freedom of thought, freedom of religion, the right to physical integrity, called bodily integrity, in the non-legally binding UDHR, for example. What am I showing on my screen? Oh wow, I can put this one off. What would be a good picture show? Perhaps the... oh, misclicked. Apollo scam NASA Masons to broaden our horizons. So the number of that official NASA picture is in the right top corner, and people can rewind and pause, etc. I have a desert squirrel on Mars. But I found another picture, and I didn't find it again in my broadcast. It may be in another previous broadcast on one of my other channels, or perhaps it's somewhere on my hard disk. And the best evidence that proves beyond any reasonable doubt the Apollo moon landings were faked by the NASA Masons is NASA's own video material. Throwing an astronaut throwing a cable, on the Lunar Explorer module, and we hear that cable drop, and that's impossible on the moon in a vacuum. There cannot be sound. In another video we see a supposed astronaut, some call them astronauts, handling plates, and when he drops that plate, we can hear that plate fall down, we can hear it come down, we hear it drop, the banging sound. And again, that would be impossible on the moon because there's no contact between the astronaut and the dropped plate, and especially not between the astronaut and the cable that was thrown. So that proves beyond any reasonable doubt they shot it in a studio. I also made a top 10 of things that prove the NASA Masons faked the Apollo moon landings. It's a scam, a hoax. By conniving Masons that make money from it. In theory, of course, without evidence. Well, this proves it beyond any reasonable doubt that they faked it, so there you go. Oh yeah, another backdrop. Broaden our horizons. Isn't one of their spaceships called Horizon or whatever? So I criticize everything and everyone because I think I'm being tortured to death. That's one reason. And because I think that it does have its effect on our timeline, on our reality. So, perfect society, that's the idea. A sunnier picture. What you could have had. Of course, I'm kidding. Perhaps something like this already exists. Except for the exotic looking buildings. The Trump peace plan. A purple tie. What does that mean? Is it code? Oh wow, I'm on camera. I think I'm gonna get something to drink and then I can turn the picture show off. Ooh. Okay. So that's the idea, smoke a peace pipe. Only once in your lifetime. But I'm not forcing anybody to do it. What will I get? I'll get some lemonade. Perhaps also some tea. So people can fast forward if you're not watching this live. I'll be back in about 5 minutes. I've concocted 2 new theories in my mind in the kitchen. 2 new theories. I have tea. I'm gonna add some honey. So one theory is it's vital to spread this video on your timeline because it's possible that it's the only way to prevent the third Jesuit World War and population reduction to 500 million. And the other theory is that the only option is world peace or universal peace, and otherwise we'll be gone forever because of all these weapons of mass destruction surrounding us all. It's possible none without a Tesla plasma shield would survive. Scalar weapons have made nuclear weapons obsolete. Though many people still talk about nukes and they leave out Putin, the ally of Iran. So their scenarios are hyper unrealistic. Not to say psycho. What would a normal reaction to that be? Would psychotic people nod their heads also when they're alone and stuff and start yelling or whatever? And people that are normal would not respond to it, they would just find it funny perhaps or whatever. Perhaps the most normal person wouldn't have any reaction to that. They'd soak up all the intelligence and come to new conclusions, and they just control these factors that control aging and create a perfect society in which we all live happily eternally. They don't want to go down with a split earth, and neither does Nikola Tesla, probably, if he's still alive in some other dimension or whatever. Nikola Tesla, the vegetarian, who created his invention to end all wars, unquote. And eugenics to a certain extent to prevent births of stillborn babies and people with diseases, children with diseases. Aren't we obligated to ourselves to make sure that we improve ourselves, to end suffering and to create a perfect society as fast as possible so we can be resurrected, colonize the universe before the Earth burns up in the last rays of the sun and the sun turns into a black or white dwarf star, and have fun. F-U-N spells fun. So the theory, another theory is that all these people are extorted with directed energy weapons, voices that tell them what to do, and they can be tortured severely if they don't. And it's also used to silence targeted individuals about this. So I just mention it because perhaps that's what's really going on and people can't believe it if they're mind controlled. The greatest enemy would hide in the last place you would ever look. Julius Caesar. What was that other thing? Oh yeah, I googled it. Trump, international law, and then I clicked on news. So let's read this then.
Carter says Trump Mideast plan violates international law. Yahoo News, January 30, 2020. Washington, AFP. Jimmy Carter said Thursday that President Donald Trump's Middle East plan would violate international law and urged the Trump plan would create a fictitious Palestinian state devoid. Mondo's 9 hours ago analysis. Trump's Al-Aqsa Mosque plan leaves Palestinians International Herald's January 29, 2020. What Trump's Middle East plan means for Palestinians. Opinion. CNN International. 22 hours ago, Trump's peace deal flagrantly tramples on Palestinian rights. In depth. The Guardian. January 30, 2020. Former U.S. President Jimmy Carter calls on international community to. International. I-24 News. 18 hours ago.
I personally think that the flying stars look better against that black background. I'm gonna try to play some more piano, but it's annoying when the computer is not functioning properly, when the notes have this vibrato to it that's not normal vibrato. It's, and theoretically I have to hold these keys for a while, and then after a while they should play normally. Perhaps if I try another sound. Let's try the 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮 piano normal version, not LE. For intuition. Try another sound bank thing. Stereo bright piano. So what I have to do is close Virtual DJ, close Podium Free, and it's a free program. And so is 𝓿𝓿𝓪𝓬𝓮. People can download these sound fonts and then they can play any instrument. Also with their computer keyboard. Thing with all these letters on it. In front of many people that are watching this broadcast, they have a keyboard. They can type a Bitcoin symbol if they know how to. Wow, that took long to close. It's 𝓿𝓿𝓪𝓬𝓮. But I'm now restarting it. Podium Free. And 𝓿𝓿𝓪𝓬𝓮. Am I sensing some precognitivity? Could be. Now, it's loading the piano, which is an awesome free piano. Because it's very good quality. 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮 piano LE. Distinctive character with 3 microphone control. And people can vary the amount of pedal noise, key up noise. When you release the key, that makes a noise as well on the piano. And the key release. Ha, it's still doing it. Wow. If I do this, if I turn on. Well, I think it's just a matter of keeping these keys pressed long enough, perhaps. Sometimes that works, but it takes some time. Klavecin. Oh. also has the key release. Let's see if I turn off the mic. Well, I can also try the piano. I didn't like it very much, but okay. It's pretty cool. Pretty realistic sounding. Clavecembal, harpsichord. Perhaps Celesta, let's test that. Well, it works as well. So then we can listen to these news articles while I try to play music. Reload the whole news.google.com page. Full coverage. Use the end button to scroll down to the bottom of the page. And start reading. Trying to select the last article. It's not. There it is.
Full coverage, top coverage. Fox News. Trump's Mideast peace plan could have major long-term implications for ally Jordan. President Trump released his deal of the century plan for Middle East peace, called Peace to Prosperity, on January 28 alongside Israeli Prime Minister. Yesterday _arrow. Al Jazeera English. Palestinians push for UN action over Trump Middle East plan. Video _YouTube. Yesterday, Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Former President Carter blasts Trump's Mideast peace plan. Former President Jimmy Carter issued a statement Thursday rejecting President Donald Trump's newly proposed Middle East peace plan, which calls for the, yesterday, Reuters U.S. envoy warns Palestinians against raising opposition to U.S. peace plan at UN. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Kelly Craft warned the Palestinians on Friday that bringing their displeasure with the U.S. peace plan to the world body. Yesterday videos play _arrow. Al Jazeera English. Palestinian president to take Trump's Middle East plan to UN. Video _YouTube. 2 days ago play _arrow. What Trump's Middle East plan means for Palestinians. Mustafa Barghouti writes that the Trump's proposed Israel-Palestine deal violates international law, ends any possibility for an independent, sovereign Palestine. Yesterday opinion timeline. Trump's Israel-Palestine peace plan is a con. 4 days ago President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, before unveiling a peace plan for the Middle East. Doug Mills, The New York Times. Trump's Mideast plan could give Israel sovereignty over much of Jordan Valley 5 days ago. Trump says Middle East plan to be unveiled before Israel's PM and opposition leader visit White House Tuesday last month. Opinion. Palestinians don't need the Trump administration's peace plan or Jared Kushner to civilize them. The struggle for Palestinian freedom was denigrated, yet again, this week when the leaders of the U.S. and Israel stood side by side at the White House and unveiled the Trump administration's new peace plan. Yesterday, Trump's Middle East plan, starting point or dead end? From all appearances, the deal of the century, as it was touted, seemed nothing more than a cynical attempt at a diversion by two politicians in trouble, a sop to their right-wing bases as each leader vies for re-election, Mr. Netanyahu in early March, Mr. Trump in November. Yesterday President Donald Trump looks over to Israeli PM Benjamin Netanyahu during an event at the White House to announce a Middle East plan on January 28, 2020, the deal of the century or the bluff of the millennium? Adelson was also among those who encouraged Trump to pull the U.S. out of the nuclear agreement with Iran. Yesterday, Fox News' Kent Ahmed, Trump's Israeli-Palestinian peace plan deserves Arab League support, but unfortunately, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has vehemently rejected the Trump peace plan and is urging his fellow Arabs and Muslims to do so as well. Yesterday analysis. Washington Post. The White House peace plan puts Israel's concerns first and shortchanges Palestinians. The Trump administration announced its long-promised deal of the century this week, proclaiming new breakthroughs in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but 2 days ago, Washington Post. Israeli settlements. The almost a tenth of Israel's Jews live in East Jerusalem and the West Bank, outside their country's recognized borders. The population of Jewish settlers in the West. 2 days ago from Twitter, CNN verified _user CNN Jared Kushner, senior advisor to the president, says the White House's Middle East plan is a great deal, and if Palestinians reject it, they're going to screw up another opportunity, like they've screwed up every other opportunity that they've ever had in their existence. https://t.co/abai3geekjig Twitter January 28, 2020 10:17 p.m. Dick Durbin verified _user Dick Durbin. We need a forward-thinking two-state solution that works for both Israel and Palestine. President Trump's proposal will not help promote a lasting peace in the Middle East. https://t.co/c9kgqdswcr Twitter January 31, 2020 5:39 p.m. Peter Baker verified _user Peter Baker Neat Carter, who brokered Camp David Accord, on Trump Middle East peace plan. The new U.S. plan undercuts prospects for a just peace between Israelis and Palestinians. If implemented, the plan will doom the only viable solution to this long-running conflict, the two-state solution. Twitter January 30, 2020 9:37 p.m. Virendra Sharma verified _user Virendra Sharma. There can be no peace between Palestinians and Israelis that ignores international law. With 133 parliamentary colleagues, I have written to Boris Johnson to ask him to reject annexation and Trump's bad deal. Twitter January 31, 2020 12:25 p.m.
So the first was 528 Hz tuned, the second was 432 Hz tuned, and well, perhaps we can read some article or whatever. Yahoo News. Agency France Presse, who also reported about the fact that the Jesuits in the Vatican, or is it Vatican and CIA, added Wikipedia, free encyclopedia. Also SBS, Com.au and ABC also reported CIA Vatican, quote, editing wiki pages, and quote, ABC News. Program shows CIA behind Wikipedia entries, ABC News. So perhaps Wiki isn't that bad, or perhaps it's worse than we think.
Carter says Trump Mideast plan violates international law. AFP January 31, 2020. Former U.S. President Jimmy Carter, pictured 2013, has sharply criticized his successor Donald Trump and number 39:S Middle East plan. Former U.S. President Jimmy Carter, pictured 2013, has sharply criticized his successor Donald Trump's Middle East plan. AFP photo. Mario Tamamura, Washington, AFP. Jimmy Carter said Thursday that President Donald Trump's Middle East plan would violate international law and urged the United Nations to stop Israel from annexing Palestinian land. The new U.S. plan undercuts prospects for a just peace between Israelis and Palestinians, the former U.S. president said in a statement. If implemented, the plan will doom the only viable solution to this long-running conflict, the two-state solution, said Carter, who brokered the landmark 1978 Camp David Accords that brought peace between Israel and Egypt. He urged UN member states to adhere to UN Security Council resolutions and to reject any unilateral Israeli implementation of the proposal by grabbing more Palestinian land. His office said in a statement that Trump's plan, unveiled Tuesday, breaches international law regarding self-determination, the acquisition of land by force, and annexation of occupied territories. By calling Israel the nation-state of the Jewish people, the plan also encourages the denial of equal rights to the Palestinian citizens of Israel, it said. Trump presented his long-awaited plan Tuesday alongside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, his close ally, who shortly afterwards signaled he would seek to annex a large part of the West Bank. Trump's plan recognizes Israeli sovereignty over most of its West Bank settlements and the Jordan Valley, as well as an undivided Jerusalem. The plan also backs a Palestinian state with a capital on the outskirts of Jerusalem, but says the Palestinian leadership must recognize Israel as a Jewish homeland and agree to a demilitarized state. The 95-year-old Carter, the longest-living president in U.S. history, has frequently spoken out since losing re-election in 1980 and has won the Nobel Peace Prize for his humanitarian work. In his recent years, he has frequently faced criticism from pro-Israel supporters for his views on the conflict, especially his use of the word apartheid to describe the Jewish state's potential future without a peace deal.
Well, it was a shorter article than I had expected.
Trump's peace deal flagrantly tramples on Palestinian rights and freedoms. Ďārī, this plan is simply a continuation of U.S.-Israel policy. Palestinians have heard it all before and won't accept it. Thursday, January 30th, 2020, 11.35 modified on for January 31st, 2020, 11.37 GMT shares 377 Palestinians in rapid protest against the Middle East peace plan. The White House never expected the Palestinian leadership to accept this plan. Palestinians in rapid protest against the Middle East peace plan. The White House never expected the Palestinian leadership to accept this plan. Photograph, op-ed images, news pictures /Rex/Shutterstock at the White House on Tuesday. Donald Trump played out his deal of the century, a plan for total Palestinian capitulation. It calls on Palestinians to recognize Israel as a Jewish state with all of Jerusalem as its capital, to give up the right of return that would allow Palestinian refugees to live in Israel, to accept the annexation of the Jordan Valley and the illegal Israeli settlements there, and to live in a series of bantusts connected by roads and tunnels that would all essentially be controlled by Israel. None of this should be surprising. Not only is the plan simply a continuation of the Trump administration's policy towards Israel and Palestine since the day he took office, but it comes after decades of disregard towards Palestinian aspirations of freedom and sovereignty. No deal. Why Trump's plan for Palestine will only create more conflict. Read more. When the Oslo Peace Accords were signed in 1993, they were held as the foundation for a negotiated peace between Israel and Palestine, a stance that most international actors and bodies have continued to hold in the decades since. At the time, however, the Palestinian scholar Edwards said dubbed the much-celebrated Accords of Palestinian Versailles a degrading spectacle that undermined the liberation struggle and any hopes for future Palestinian sovereignty. Unfortunately, he has been proven right. The division of the West Bank into areas A, B and C under the Accords allowed Israel to dominate the latter two areas while the former became pockets of limited Palestinian autonomy. In other words, it facilitated the complete Bantustanization of the West Bank and the isolation of Gaza. Meanwhile, the Accords failed to properly address the key issues of Jerusalem, refugees, settlements, borders and security. Instead, they were designated final status issues. to be resolved as part of some future peace deal. Inadvertently, then, the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, led by Yasser Arafat, allowed them to become disputed issues, rather than ones central to the Palestinian struggle and defined clearly in international law. This was clear at the White House yesterday when, standing at Trump's side, Benjamin Netanyahu said that talk of the occupation as illegal was outrageous. There were no Palestinians at the White House. Indeed, Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law and the architect of this plan, barely bothered to speak to any Palestinians. And there is no mention in Trump's plan of Palestinian rights. Instead, Palestinians are promised economic incentives, namely $50 billion of investment over the next 10 years, in exchange for their internationally enshrined rights, another all too familiar component of previous peace plans. As if paying Palestinians off would make them forget their rights to Jerusalem, to return to their villages and towns of origin or to live as equal and full human beings. 2:16. Trump unveils ultimate deal for Middle East peace, video advertisement. It is thus clear that Trump's plan is not only an assault on Palestinian rights and freedom but also an attempt to put forward a new world order that completely undermines international law. Whatever the White House might say, it never expected the Palestinian leadership would accept this plan or even consider some of its terms and conditions. And that means it can continue to buy into the decades-old and quite frankly racist narrative that the Palestinian people are rejectionist and unwilling to negotiate. That was evident in Kushner's comments. If the Palestinians don't accept this deal, he argued, they're going to screw up another opportunity like they've screwed up every other opportunity that they've ever had in their existence. Depressing as the Trump plan may be, it does suggest one possible opportunity. It stipulates that while negotiations take place, the PLO is not to take part in any action against Israel at the International Criminal Court, in a nod to the recent war crimes probe opened by the court's chief prosecutor. This reveals that Israel is genuinely scared of such a move, if any international actors are brave enough to seek it. The latest major Trump resignations and firings. Read more. However, none of this changes the reality on the ground. There is effectively one entity spanning from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, where two groups of people live vastly unequal and separate lives. Israel and the US are working hard to consolidate and to finalize this, and with the help of a paralyzed and cowardly international community, they will. Yet the other part of the reality is that Palestinians are not going anywhere. They continue to live in their millions in Haifa, Jaffa, Jerusalem, Ramallah, Hebron and beyond. They have to drastically change their current reality, by mobilizing and demanding more from their leadership, and imagining a radically different future even when it seems impossible. Yara Hawari is a senior policy fellow at Al-Shabaka, the Palestinian Policy Network. As 2020 begins, we're asking readers, like you, to make a New Year contribution in support of The Guardian's open, independent journalism.
So that was Bach's thing, and then I changed it into something new. Alrighty then. Well, it was very reasonable. But I think I've covered some substantial things also in my previous broadcasts. the White House on Tuesday, Donald Trump laid out his, quote, deal of the century, unquote, a plan for total Palestinian capitulation. The action of ceasing to resist an opponent or demand. So it's a plan for total Palestinian capitulation. So they want to make the Palestinians stop resisting an opponent or demand. 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮. It calls on Palestinians to recognize Israel as a Jewish state with all of Jerusalem as its capital, to give up the right of return that would allow Palestinian refugees to live in Israel, to accept the annexation of the Jordan Valley and the illegal Israeli settlements there, and to live in a series of Bantustans connected by roads and tunnels that would all essentially be controlled by Israel. "190 protesters killed in Gaza." We can see depleted uranium babies are going to be born for 4.5 million years, the half-time of depleted uranium. Why would we trust these people? Or it's why people don't trust Netanyahu and Bush and some all-Americans anymore. So I'm happy there are Americans that protested for peace against the war. Thought it was a much smaller group than the people that protested anti-Semitism. And it's also covered in my broadcasts. And I'm pro-peace, anti-war. So they should cut it out, stop state-sponsored terrorism on both sides, stop making death threats to the US, Israel and Great Britain, and on the other hand stop pressurizing Iran and come up with the logical plan. Good ideas that both sides are willing to accept. Or perhaps the UN has to broker and they just have to impose it on both sides. They'll just have to live in peace. They can take these weapons away, give them all equal rights in return for the Temple Mount, also the right to return to Israel. But they might not even agree with that. Some people would disagree with that. Even on the Palestinian side, perhaps. But I think on the Palestinian side you would find more people that are for a one-state solution. I've covered it in my previous broadcast as well. It's in the One-State Solution Wiki article. At the bottom you can see the opinion polls. We can look at that now. And then we can wonder, does it matter what the people want or only what the politicians do?
Public opinion, a multi-option poll by Near East Consulting, NEC. in November 2007 found the binational state to be less popular than either two states for two people or a Palestinian state on all historic Palestine, with only 13.4% of respondents supporting a binational solution. 92. However, in February 2007, NEC found that around 70% of Palestinian respondents backed the idea when given a straight choice of either supporting or opposing a one-state solution in historic Palestine, where Muslims, Christians and Jews have equal rights and responsibilities. 93. In March 2010, a survey by the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research and the Harry S. Truman Research Institute for the Advancement of Peace at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem found that Palestinian support had risen to 29%. 94. In April 2010, a poll by the Jerusalem Media and Communication Center also found that Palestinian support for a binational solution had jumped from 20.6% in June 2009 to 33.8%. 95. If this support for a binational state is combined with the finding that 9.8% of Palestinian respondents favor a Palestinian state in all of historic Palestine, this poll suggested about equal Palestinian support for a two-state and one-state solution in mid-2010. 94-95, in 2011. A poll by Stanley Greenberg and the Palestinian Center for Public Opinion and sponsored by the Israel Project revealed that 61% of Palestinians rejected two-state solution, while 34% said they accepted it. 66% said the Palestinians' real goal should be to start with a two-state solution but then move to it all being one Palestinian state. Polls show that if the two-state solution were taken off the table, a strong majority of Americans would favor a one-state solution in which Jews and Arabs would have equal citizenship and rights. Most Americans also view democracy as more important than Israel's Jewishness.
Well, I should be able to say something about all this. Perhaps read the one-state solution intro of the wiki article again.
The one-state solution, sometimes also called a binational state, is a proposed approach to resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. 1. Proponents of a unified Israel advocate a single state in Israel, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. 1-2, with citizenship and equal rights in a combined entity for all inhabitants of all three territories, without regard to ethnicity or religion. 1. Some Israelis advocate another version of the one-state solution in which Israel will annex the West Bank but not the Gaza Strip and remain a Jewish state with a larger Arab minority. 3. While some advocate this solution for ideological reasons, 1. Others feel simply that, due to the reality on the ground, it is the de facto situation. 4-5. Many who argue for a one-state solution excluding Gaza argue that there is no need to include it due to its self-governing status. Alternatively, supporters of a united Palestine wish for a single state without regard to ethnicity or religion. Such a state would be similar to pre-World War II mandatory Palestine, which is sought out from a wish to forego Israeli occupation, as well as 19th and 20th century Zionist settlement, widely viewed among supporters as a form of colonialism. 6-7-8. Though increasingly debated in academic circles, this approach has remained outside the range of official efforts to resolve the conflict as well as mainstream analysis, where it is eclipsed by the two-state solution. The two-state solution was most recently agreed upon in principle by the Government of Israel and the Palestinian Authority at the November 2007 Annapolis Conference and remained the conceptual basis for negotiations proposed by the administration of U.S. President Barack Obama in 2011. Interest in a one-state solution is growing, however, as the two-state approach fails to accomplish a final agreement.
So, to exclude the possibility of a two-state solution world war, they could build into the agreement that only allows Israel and Palestine to fight among themselves and no help from the ally countries. Because otherwise it could of course lead to a world war. We see what happened in the past. On interfaithfamily.com I read, Jews are legally forbidden to intermarry in Israel unless one spouse converts to the other partner's religion. If neither spouse will convert, the engaged interfaith couple must travel abroad to wed. Ironically, Israel gives legal recognition to intermarriages taking place abroad. Shipler's research indicated that in the 1980s these courageous couples were primarily Jewish women married to Arab men. So it did happen, but now there's more segregation, so then you cannot have marriages between Israeli Jewish people and Palestinian Arabic people. But in the past they did get married, and of course they may be happily married with children, etc. So I think they can live in peace with one another. People shouldn't overdo religion. Keep it legit. And use it as a tool to create peace if they must be religious. But I think it's better to keep it secret. I've advised people to keep it secret if possible, because some people would kill someone if they're religious and others would kill them if they're non-religious. And of course we can become religious or non-religious whenever we think that is necessary. Of course, some people are also instructed to lie. And I think that we find it in both religions, Abraham, etc. In the biggest religions, Christianity and Islam. And it's forbidden to speak a false oath, but what was his name? Wasn't under oath, and then you get that. I think it's also wrong to lie when you're not under oath, if you're a public official, etc. Two wrongs don't make a right. Once a liar, always a liar, pen's not on fire. Blah blah. This American woman's crime, she married a Palestinian, ... Reported by 𝓟𝓮𝓪𝓬𝓮. The land. In Hebrew. So perhaps somebody can teach me the secrets of the name of Allah. But I think Freud is right, so perhaps it's not a good idea to talk about religion. It's better to talk of universal peace, controlling of factors that control aging, creating a perfect society, clean energy, hydroelectric power instead of nuclear energy, and sea energy instead of wind turbines, and fossil fuels. I think gas is better than fossil fuels. It's very clean, and the water-powered car is better than the cancer oil, petroleum-based internal combustion engines, ICE cars. So the first car drove on water, invented by Isaac de Rivas, waterpoweredcar.com. And I've shown this video of Denny Klein's water-powered car used by the military. They used a hybrid version, and I've calculated how much water it would take to drive 100 kilometers, etc. I calculated the usage of the water-powered car, how far it can drive on 1 liter of water, basically. So it's a patented hydrolysis process, and perhaps people cannot use that. Perhaps they'd have to pay lots of money. So people may produce it themselves, but they may not sell it. It's the way patents work. So basically some argue that the patent office is blocking access to these water-powered car and other inventions that would help to create a cleaner environment and save people a lot of money. So perhaps they could also chip in to make a better future for humanity and a better climate. But in reality there is no anthropogenic global warming, only natural warming and cooling. And in our history, the history of the Earth, there was a lot more CO2 than there is today. On Earth, in our biosphere. So I can Google anything. I've already made clear that the broadcast about, what was it überhaupt? It's the two-state solution, World War, the Trump peace plan, World War, and Jesuits' possible involvement, alleged involvement. and the possible World War III date, the 3rd of March 2020. Could also be the 22nd of March, 322. And preventing beats curing. But they turn it into selling beats curing to reduce the global population. And they do horrible atrocities, etc. The policy killed millions. And if there's a world war, possibly billions. But, of course, it's possible there is no world war. There will never be a world war. People are smart enough not to self-annihilate. Hopefully. But I still have my doubts about that. Which I've already expressed in previous broadcasts. Listing reasons why I think it's likely that they've planned a world war, and also World War III deterrence, things that prevent a world war, reasons, people with a Tesla plasma shield in underground cities that would accumulate wealth and power from a world war would not create a world war. Yeah, I think that's about it for now. It's 3:30, almost 3:35 in the Netherlands. So, of course, this broadcast may only be used to create universal peace, and I think it does. That logic is still the best solution. Truth. Castles made of sand, the facade falls down, etc. Being glad with what we have, would that help? Well, I'm not getting another brilliant idea, so for now, thank you all for your likes and subscribes and shares on your timeline. Slowly building up. I hope to get 1,000 likes and subscribers, and perhaps it only takes one famous person to share an opinion about my video and watch a video, a good one. For example, the one about Greta Thunberg's lies. And I've also quoted some sensible things that she said, so I don't blame her for Al Gore and George Soros' carbon tax scam. I see them more like victims, and they're do-gooders that are trying to do the right thing for the people of planet Earth, and the Earth as well, so they understand that we need a good environment. If we want a better life, then the environment is also important. And I agree with that. We can't use too much soap. You have red tide, for example, fish jumping above the water that can't get oxygen. And that may be related to the soap washing down the mountains in Ireland and ending up in the sea. So perhaps it can be engineered so that that doesn't happen anymore. Too much plastic in sea salt, etc. So we need to deplastify, and also perhaps we can make plastic out of hemp and other eco-friendly materials. I'm for keeping the Earth's lungs, the rainforest. People can visit the rainforestsite.com and click for free, and for every free click that people can give, just one click, a sponsor will preserve a piece of rainforest. Air cleaner with an ionizer, colloidal silver, probiotics, radiological water filter, and storable food. These 4 things may be important because it's possible people that don't have these things will die. If the killer vaccines are successful, they don't even need a world war to reduce the global population to 500 million. Of course, it may be super viral because its mortality rate is only 2 to 3%. The coronavirus, patented by Peerbright.co.uk, Peerbright Institute, and they did receive funding from Bill and Melinda Gates. I covered it in my previous broadcast as well. So these are hot items, they're present in the mainstream media everywhere, including what according to many is a fake impeachment of Donald Trump. So the story I've heard is that Trump cannot get a majority in the Senate, so he cannot be voted out of office. So it's a waste of time and money, you could argue, if that's true. If they can see that already, then they might as well end it. But okay, if impeachment could prevent a world war, but perhaps Trump is preventing a world war, so that's perhaps I should investigate it more closely. What do you all think? Is Trump creating or preventing a world war? He talked about proportionate punishment that must be proportionate to the crime. And he called off his attack because he thought it would be disproportionate punishment. But after that he said something that he will do something disproportionate if something happens to the American troops in the Middle East. And there are 60 to 70,000 troops in the Middle East already. Many people don't know this because every time the mainstream media reports 10 or 13,000 troops go to the Middle East, etc. But it's US Central Command that claimed that basically 60 to 70,000 troops. So if 1,000 troops are missing, perhaps they wouldn't even know. They said, yeah, 60 to 70,000. We're not going to bother counting the real soldiers. So I think soldiers also have rights, and they may not be injected with squalene and killer vaccines. They must have that right to physical integrity. Like people who are not soldiers. Everybody has this right to physical integrity, bodily integrity. And it's also in your local constitution, not just in the UDHR, which is not legally binding. Alright, so I'm reporting and I'm repeating the important things. I think my broadcasts are awesome. So please like, subscribe and share. And see you all next time on Perfect Society. And remember, do something for universal peace. And be solidary, so show your solidarity with other people that are for universal peace. For bringing the troops home alive. And give them your money instead of people that help to create a war and slaughter innocent civilians. So the earth is not overpopulated, that's the main lie these people that want to reduce the global population are using. And 190 protesters were murdered in Palestine, Israel, Gaza, West Bank. And I've reported about that as well. So that shows that even protesters are slaughtered, even if there is no war. And at least there is no world war. So I think it's best to declare a ceasefire. And like Gandhi's family said, to be the change you wish to see in the world. You can also try something.vegetarian on YouTube, that's my other channel, and the Future channel on YouTube. Thank you all for watching, tune in next time on Perfect Society. Peace out. Kiss for single ladies who would like that.